Friday morning. It's a wet Friday morning here in Johannesburg. My name is Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Makamate.
This is the Newsroom. We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now today, the focus is on the march against illegal foreign nationals in Pretoria and Atteridgeville. Now, since this morning, foreign-owned shops have been looted, with even our own SABC camera stolen, as well, it was returned a little bit later. So we'll talk to our reporter in a short while. That's why we're running this poll and we're asking you, the latest rounds of attacks, is it xenophobic or criminal acts, Kendall?
100%. We've got 31 votes that have come in so far, and 45% of our viewers are saying the latest round of attacks are xenophobic, and 55% say it's criminal.
Well, we'll keep you updated on that, and let's also see what you have tweeted us about this particular context. This one from Siafana says, it has become a criminal act because now some of other people, they broke the Nigerian shops and they stole everything. Hashtag xenophobia, says Siafana.
Unati Grootboom comes in with SABC Newsroom. This is not about xenophobia. It's about drug dealers who make lives of the community miserable. Hashtag Atteridgeville, SABC News.
Well, there you have already differing views, and that's what the poll reflects as well. Some people say it is xenophobic, others says these are criminal acts.
Exactly.
We'd like to know from you. Let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. But we're also asking a question today, Kendall.
Absolutely. Because of the context within which all of this is happening, we're asking you, South African-Nigerian relations are on a knife edge because of the violence. What is your view?
That's what we want to know from you. Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as the Facebook page. But before we get to there, let's take a look at our news headlines. Unrest unfolds in Pretoria as protesters embark on a march against foreign nationals. Parliament's SABC inquiry wants President Jacob Zuma to sanction Communications Minister Faith Mutambi. And recent rains, and heavy rains that is, bring hope as the country's dams slowly swell, but it comes with danger. Those are all your headlines. But before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate. What's happening on the sports front this morning, Kendall?
Elvis, with all the heavy news going on around the country, we're able to bring a little bit of cheer because Super Rugby is back in action, and you know, I get ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Let me greet our viewers. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
And Ioane picks it up and he gives it to his brother, Akira, to Rico, and Rico has got a hat-trick.
The Rebels get a rude awakening as they get thumped 56-18 by the Blues as Super Rugby 2017 clicks back into action. And tabletoppers Bidvest travel to Loftus Versfeld to face defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns in an enticing upset premiership matchup.
Sentners slowed it down but kept the length back, and Dumini's nowhere near it.
Ahead of the Champions Trophy in June, the Proteas battle unit looks to put in a better performance in the 30 ODI against New Zealand tomorrow in Wellington. All this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin, but for now it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Our top story this morning, a protest turned violent in Atteridgeville, west of Pretoria, where some people are reported to be stopping vehicles from leaving the township. Now, this has become a march, as the march is planned against illegal immigrants in Pretoria. Earlier, the organizers of the march gave the assurance that their protest action would be peaceful. Scores of foreigners have expressed fear on social media that they may be attacked. The march comes as Nigerian protesters attacked MTN offices in Abuja and embarked on a demonstration at the country's High Commission against xenophobia-related incidents in South Africa. One of the march organizers, Makoba Lekanyani, says that they've had it with the illegal foreigners dealing in drugs and prostitution. Now, as you know, the situation is tense in Atteridgeville, west of Pretoria, ahead of the march against the illegal immigrants in the city in Pretoria. Earlier, roads leading in and out of the township have been barricaded with burning tires, stones and other objects. The situation is tense there ahead of that march. Our SABC reporter and crew was attacked and equipment taken from them earlier on. Community members have also attacked a police vehicle after accusing officers of protecting illegal immigrants. Now, there's tight security in Tshwane and the surrounding areas ahead of the march against the illegal immigrants. A group calling itself the Mamelodi Concerned Residents has organized the march. For more on this, we are joined from Pretoria by our SABC News reporter, Sipo Stierman. A very good morning to you, Sipo, and welcome. Sipo, we believe that you got your camera back. Briefly take us through what actually happened.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Elvis. Indeed, we do have our camera back, which is why we are able to do this live broadcast from you here in the streets of Pretoria. WF Nkomo, this is a very big street that is linking Atteridgeville to the CBD, and in the CBD, that is where they will be commencing the protest to Home Affairs. And what had happened earlier is that, of course, as you mentioned in your intro, we got reports of some looting and some tires burning in Atteridgeville, and of course we went to rush there to try and capture that, but then on our way there we were then blocked by protesters who told us that we were not allowed to shoot, and then as a result of that, in that scuffle where they surrounded us, then they took our camera, and then they also took the cell phone of our radio reporter. Our radio reporter, Maluto Pusang's cell phone is still missing. I don't think he'll be getting it back, as the protesters have now moved along to Pretoria CBD. However, after 30 minutes or so of talks, we were able then to negotiate the release of our cameras, and they told us that they didn't want us to, they thought we were against them, that we were going to portray an incorrect picture of what they're trying to achieve. And what they're trying to achieve, they tell us, is that they are trying to drive out illegal immigrants that are associated with crimes such as prostitution and drug dealing. And I do have with me the Metro spokesperson, Isaac Mahamba. If you can just talk to us about what actually, we've seen a lot of, rather violent scenes this morning. We reports of looting in Sourceville and Atteridgeville. Just give us a picture of what happened.
Good morning and good morning to the viewers. What we can confirm at this stage is that yes, in the morning there were some issues in Atteridgeville. They were blocking the entrance and the exit of of Atteridgeville, specifically at Mawunde and Koza Street. But the incidents of looting, they were reported. We are still going to verify that. It's not yet confirmed whether they looted or not. At this stage in Atteridgeville is calm, and we are safely again to report that in Mamelodi again the situation is under control, it's calm. The only thing that we are having now, or that is just erupted, is a group of people that are starting to gather, and they are want to illegally march into the CBD. What we've noticed again, where we're standing earlier on, there were a group that comes from Atteridgeville. They were here, they said they are going to march into the CBD. Operationally, we took the decision to allow them, although we are aware that their march is illegally for now, for them to march from here into the CBD. The only march that we should take note of, that we gave permission for them to march, is the one from Mamelodi, the one that will start around about 12 o'clock during the day. They'll march from Old Badco Depot in Marabastad into the head office of Home Affairs.
Oh, all right. You mentioned that the one that is organized by the concerns residents of Mamelodi, that's the march you gave the go-ahead to, and that it will be taking place from Marabastad Home Affairs to the CBD. But surely in your planning you should have been aware that there might be sporadic incidents such as this, and some individuals taking advantage of the situation. And suddenly when we had our cameras taken from us, there wasn't that many police on this road. Of course you responded later on, but earlier on there wasn't that much visibility.
Remember, we correctly said we are aware that was going to happen today. And as you said, we are monitoring the whole of Tshwane. We are anticipating that it might also erupt in other parts of the city. Hence, we are deploying police everywhere that we can. We are working in a way that we are monitoring the whole environment or the whole area. As and when there are certain scenes that are reported where we are not nearer to that scene, we are going to respond very quickly. We've established a team where they are monitoring all these incidents. As and when something is reported elsewhere, the response time, we are going to make sure that it's very quick. But what I would like to emphasize, police and metropolis officers, we are all over. As you indicated, we reported the matter. Within some few minutes, we responded to make sure that we assist. So that's what's going to happen. The group or the groups that are gathering now to start one to march, we were, we could pick up that this could happen. Hence, we planned accordingly. Right. You see that one, we are still monitoring that group. We make sure that they are peaceful into the CBD. But as I said, it should be noted that they are there illegally.
All right. Now, just very briefly, now, of course, there were a lot of concerns with this march, and we've spoken about it over the last 2 weeks. Why did you give them the permission to go ahead, considering the environment that over the weekend we saw there was other foreign nationals attacked and some lootings in Atteridgeville? So it doesn't seem like to be the right space for such a march.
Remember, we took a lot of considerations before we can approve this particular march. One, it could be that every citizen has a right to march, although it has to happen peacefully so. And the other thing is we check the environment, or we analyze the situation just to make sure that if we could have disapproved that particular march, we could have policed an illegal march like the one that is erupting now. So that one, we know that who is the convener, where are you going to gather, and it's going to be much easier for us as police to make sure that we police them. Hence, we plan accordingly to that particular one. But yes, safely said, we are aware that there is some that, can just crop up somewhere, and we'll make sure that we'll deal with those accordingly.
All right, well, there you have it from the Tshwane Metro spokesperson telling us that they only gave approval to one march, and that is a march that is expected to start around 11 to midday from Marabastad going to Home Affairs. That is the march organized by the Mamelodi concerned residents. They're saying, however, what we saw earlier on with the group that took our camera, that was not the march that they gave a go-ahead to, but they're telling us that they're all over the place and that they will respond as and when violent matters erupt.
Sipho, why are they looting the concerned residents, and why did that happen especially to the foreign-owned shops? What was their reason?
Well, we actually did speak to the organizers of the march, and they spoke very strongly, saying that if you're looting, you are not part of this march. They're saying the march is about to just raise awareness that, government needs to work harder to limit the influx of what they call illegal immigrants. And they're saying that they also need an end to drug usage in the inner cities, and also that is there's a lot of prostitution taking place, and that they want to see that coming down. So they say anyone then who is then looting or doing any violent actions, then those are opportunists who are criminals and who should face the law. So you do get the sense that there are two groups within this march. You do have the organizers who went through the proper channels and got the permission from the city, but then now all of a sudden we had a group that just stormed even us and took our camera that seems to be going about it in a different way, and they're not following the rules that were set with that permission of the march.
I got the sense when you were speaking to the police that they're expecting some other protests around the city. Does it seem like these protests are all coordinated and orchestrated?
Well, what has happened, and this has happened even last week when earlier on in the week when the looting started, we are seeing sporadic incidents of looting. You will be in one side of the capital, whether you are in Mamelodi, then you hear that they just looted a shop in Atteridgeville or in Pretoria, North Mabopane. So you do get a sense that there are people that are assessing the situation, and they take advantage, and then they would loot at one end, and then once the attention and all the police are rushing to that end to try and contain the situation, then you hear another one breaking out in a different part of the city. So it really is a cat and mouse type of situation. You have looting in the north, and then when you try to put those flames off, so to speak, then you get another report that it's happening elsewhere. So you have to feel for the metro in a sense that that's how it's happening, because the capital is a big city with east, west and the north. So they are trying to play a catch-up game, but of course we do think they should have been better prepared, but they do say that they have a plan, and that they will respond on time when there are incidents reported to them.
Sipho, you'll keep us updated on the situation there in Pretoria. Thank you so much for that report. That was our SABC News reporter, Sipho Stuurman. He's live from Atteridgeville in Pretoria. We'll keep you updated. You don't want to miss this. This is an ongoing discussion. It's coming live from Pretoria. Let's now see what you have to say on social media, and let's take a look at the question, the poll that we posed to you this morning. We're asking you the latest round of attacks. Are they xenophobic or criminal? The latest rounds of attacks, are they xenophobic or criminal? Let's take a look on the poll. Well, there goes the poll. We're going to come back. If you can just give me a second just to go back to that poll to give you an update on that one. Let me first see what you have to say. Doc Moses Villani says, I blame Herman Mashaba for this. Hashtag xenophobic violence, and leaders must watch what they say. Leadership is dololo on this man. So says Doc Moses Villani. Lahasa Butler Molo says this has nothing to do with xenophobia. South Africans love this country, so they are giving them warning by obeying South Africa's laws. So says Lahasa. It is no xenophobia, he says. Doc Moses Villani comes back, he says, yes, it's xenophobic, and we are inviting hashtag Boko Haram in our country. Well, so says Doc Moses Villani. You can keep them coming on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. Now, yesterday, police in Nigeria reportedly guarding all offices of the mobile phone giant MTN in the capital Abuja after protesters against xenophobic attacks here in South Africa tried to storm it. Now, according to media reports, the offices were sealed off and no one was being allowed to enter the building. Meanwhile, the organizers of today's march against illegal immigrants in Pretoria yesterday, they have given that assurance that their protest action will be peaceful. That march comes as Nigerian protesters attacked and looted the MTN offices there. And now, if you look at this, the organizers of today's march, as you know, they have guaranteed yesterday that there will be no problem with the issues there. All they want is illegal foreigners that are allegedly dealing in drugs and prostitution to leave the country.
Timejo Latunji, an Abuja resident who witnessed the incident, said the incident was a reaction to xenophobic attacks against Nigerians in South Africa. Anti-immigrant violence has flared sporadically in South Africa against the background of near record unemployment, with foreigners being accused of taking jobs from locals and getting involved in crime.
This thing should stop. The first time I heard about it was around 2008, and I have a neighbor who had that issue. He had a business South Africa, and up till now he hasn't even planned of going back. Up to, in fact, you don't even dare mention South Africa near him due to the effect. And if this is a country that has gained a lot from Nigerians and due to the bilateral relationship that is between them, you don't expect such things to happen.
Protesters stormed the regional head office of MTN, the biggest South African company active in Nigeria, and stole customers' phones, vandalized equipment, and attacked customers.
Some customers that are inside, they boggle them and collect a lot of things from them. They collect phones, laptop. Meanwhile, some customers, they outside here, I am complaining about that.
The incident coincided with a visit by MTN chairman Phuthuma Nhleko to the Nigerian capital to see Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, who has been in charge for the last month for President Muhammadu Buhari, who is absent on sick leave. This week, at least 20 shops believed to be belonging to immigrants were looted in South Africa's capital. Police refused to say if the attackers were specifically targeting foreigners. Nigeria and South Africa, the continent's two largest economies and preeminent diplomatic and military powers, have a volatile relationship.
Meanwhile, the Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gaba condemned the violent attacks on foreign nationals during these protests. He also called on foreign nationals to respect the laws of the country. Briefing the media on recent attacks on foreign nationals in Rosettenville and Pretoria West, Gaba dismissed reports that these incidents are xenophobic. Responding to the Nigerian government's call for the African Union to intervene in the issue, Gaba said that the government will be meeting with the AU ambassadors to find a solution to the latest incident.
We should desist as countries from pointing fingers at one another in regard to issues that we may not have sufficient levels of information about. To my understanding, there is nobody in South Africa who has attacked someone purely on the basis of them being from another country. Whenever there have been incidents, they were sparked by something and they then blow up, because once you have mob violence or mob activity, it becomes very difficult to contain when the tempers are flying high. You need to contain the violence and then start asking people what actually started all of this. And then you realize, as it happened in 2015, that, oh, no, the problem was a factory in Durban that was not employing South Africans. And instead of people reporting this to us so that we charge the company and take the relevant action against it, they then took their actions, their anger against vulnerable immigrants. And that's what we are trying to discourage, so that people can focus on reporting issues to government, and we should act timeously to deal with the reports that have been brought before us. But for governments to point fingers at one another, it's something that we need to discourage very, very strongly.
I have requested a meeting with the AU ambassadors to discuss the recent incidents and the measures that government is taking. But I think it will be necessary for the ambassadors, before they make pronouncements, to meet with government and seek to immerse themselves in knowledge with regard to what is going on the ground. Because even as we went to Rosettenville, the people of Rosettenville themselves, bar a few exceptions, were clear that we're not acting against foreign nationals. We're not against even Nigerian immigrants. We are against immigrants involved in crime, as we would be against South Africans involved in crime. You will all remember that there have been many incidents in our country where communities have taken what I would call vigilante activities against South African criminals and took the law into their own hands, which we discourage. But what I'm trying to highlight is that these are not activities that communities, when they undertake them, they do so because the people involved are non-South Africans, even against South African criminals, where they feel that people have been terrorizing communities with immunity. Communities have taken action on their own and forced the state to then get involved. I wish to appeal to all South Africans to desist from rhetoric or actions that are xenophobic. I also want to commend the many responsible South Africans who have been a living testament to Ubuntu and tolerance. South Africa is amongst the most diverse countries in the world. We are a host to multiple nationalities from the world, and most especially the African continent. I reject any insinuation or assertion seeking to cast us as mere xenophobes. We have challenges. South Africa remains the most diverse country on the continent and is by many measures a beacon of tolerance and human rights. I have also been made aware of sound clippings as well as photoshopped pictures that are circulating both within our country and in other countries on the African continent. I wish to deny categorically that those are authentic. They have been photoshopped, as I say, and the sound clippings is clearly the work of somebody who seeks to cultivate hysteria in our country, to incite our public, as well as to drive fear among the foreign nationals, both those within the country and abroad. South Africa and the South African government will continue to do all in its power, working together as the security cluster to combat public violence, to ensure that xenophobia is dealt with, but above everything else, to continue to respond positively and genuinely to the concerns of South Africans. It remains our view that those who commit crime must not be profiled according to nationality, but we should deal with those committing crime, whatever their country of origin, as criminals and alleged criminals, according to what our constitution and laws prescribe.
Well, that's the minister there. So that's why we're conducting this poll And we are asking you, if you put up that poll up there so you can see where it stands right now. It's on a knife edge, the relations between South Africa and Nigeria. So the latest rounds of attacks, we're asking you, are they xenophobic or are they criminal? Let's take a look at what you have to say. 35 votes in so far, 46% of you saying they are xenophobic. The rest say no. So we're also posing the question to you, and the question, of course, today, South Africa and Nigeria relations on a knife edge. Well, there you have it. Let's take a look at what you have to say. This one coming from Shaba says, South Africans are ungrateful. The whole of Africa stood with them during the apartheid era. They are now killing Africans, says Shaba Baba Muhammad. This one from Claudia Sabola says, how quick South Africans have forgotten that other African countries helped us gain our freedom. Now we're destroying all those relationships. And look at the crying face over there. That's from Claudia. Lord says, true. We saw what's happening on to MTN in Nigeria. It's fire with fire, fire against fire, which is not good for relations between the two countries. Mohale says, the truth is, government does not offer any social and business protection to the local people. It's unjustified that they don't do that, says Mohale. Claudia come back and she says, in fact, it's the same SMS that the same Twitter tweet that we've read earlier, but a crying face at the end of that tells it all. So you can let us know what's on your mind. Let us know on Twitter, handle at SABC Newsroom. Let's now take a look at our picture of the day that comes from Satao. And he says, no to xenophobia. We are one. There is strength in unity. There you see Africa unite, holding hands together, say no to xenophobia. That's what it's all about today as the march against illegal immigrants continue. And we'll keep you updated on that in Pretoria with our reporter Sifa Steerman telling us more later. Now, comment of the day comes from Colleen Davis. She says the attack on foreigners in any country is not acceptable. Full stop. Don't justify it, deflect it, or defend it. Change it. Hashtag xenophobia. Fantastic piece there from Claudia. Let's now take a look at what's happening in our courts. The Democratic Alliance leader Musi Maimane will lay charges against members of the cabinet, the SAPS, the Hawks, NPA, as well as other senior government officials in Cape Town today. In 2015, the High Court in Pretoria ruled that the cabinet members and senior government officials failed to arrest the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. Meanwhile, the EFF leader Julius Malema will appear in the Newcastle Magistrates Court in KwaZulu-Natal this morning. This comes after he allegedly called on his supporters to invade land during the party's political gathering in the province. The Hawks brought the matter against Malema for allegedly contravening the Riotous Assemblies Act of 1956. Two men who pleaded guilty to being in possession of a stolen cell phone of murdered Cape Town teenager Francisca Blochlinger will be sentenced today in the Wynberg Magistrates Court. Jerome Moses and Daniel Easter entered into a plea agreement with the state yesterday. The case against a fourth accused is being heard separately in the High Court. He's facing charges of rape, robbery and murder. 16-year-old Blochlinger was found dead in Tokai Forest in the South Peninsula in March last year. She had been jogging in the area. Those are some of your news stories. We'll keep you abreast and updated on those stories and other court stories as they develop, so you have to stay tuned. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. After that, we continue our discussion and our focus on whether it is xenophobia or criminal acts, what's currently happening in Pretoria with the march against illegal immigrants. Welcome back. Now, with roads leading in and out of Attridgeville reported to have already been barricaded with burning tires, stones and other objects, there are those who are blaming the recent attacks on the Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba's comments on immigrants. Prior to the violent protests in Rosettenville, where a number of houses belonging to foreign nationals were torched, Mashaba was quoted as saying that illegal immigrants are holding this country to ransom. However, he denied the allegations that his comments were xenophobic.
It's unfortunate that I'm not really getting the full cooperation of the national government to assist us so that we can come out with a joint plan, because as a city of Johannesburg, we have competencies at local level. Unfortunately, some of the issues are of a national nature, like making sure that we have the prosecuting authority so that criminal elements are prosecuted accordingly, that we don't have jails as a city, we don't have the courts. So for as long as we're not getting the full cooperation of national government, unfortunately this will remain a challenge. However, I'm saying to residents of Johannesburg, I'm not going to give up on this. I will ensure that I put everyone accountable to this matter. I will engage them and ensure that ultimately people of Johannesburg eventually are going to be the winners in this matter.
Yeah.
Amnesty International took a swipe at the mayor, Herman Mashaba, for his comments and described them as irresponsible.
Has monitored long-standing patterns of discriminatory attitudes and practices towards refugees, migrants and asylum seekers in South Africa, either by the general public, some government departments and the police services. This discrimination has continued with impunity. It is in this context that Amnesty International believes that the comments made by the Honourable Mayor Herman Mashaba are discriminatory and inflammatory. They're also dangerous and divisive because these comments are not based on any empirical evidence. Instead, the claims are based on prejudice against refugees, migrants and asylum seekers in South Africa. The statements also undermine human rights enshrined in the Bill of Rights of our Constitution, which affirms the protection of the human rights of all people in South Africa.
We see the rise around the world of anti-immigration sentiments. We see Brexit. We see Donald Trump being elected in the US. Is this the new normal against migrant workers and refugees around the world? And should we really push to stamp that out of South Africa?
You're right. What we're seeing is a pattern of a more security risk-based approach towards migrants around the world and also in South Africa. And what Amnesty International is promoting is a more human rights-based approach to protect the rights of refugees, migrants and asylum seekers. The
next steps with regards to Mr. Herman Mashaba, the new mayor here in Johannesburg, what would you like to see? The ANC stepped in. They say that a case is going to be brought forward, and we've seen discussions in a meeting now with the Home Affairs Minister. Is that enough? What would you like to see happening going forward?
Amnesty International is calling for authorities to counter stereotypical comments, to eradicate discrimination, and also to foster greater equality and social cohesion. We are also calling for authorities to counter stereotypical comments like this and to make it clear that discrimination and violence against refugees, migrants, and asylum seekers will not be tolerated in South Africa.
To what the Home Affairs Minister said, the African Diaspora Forum believes that the recent violent protests that have taken place in Rosettenville, in Johannesburg, as well as in Pretoria now, are targeting foreign nationals and are xenophobic. ADF has called on the South African government to intervene. And with what is dubbed the March Against Immigrants in Pretoria this morning, the African Diaspora Forum has raised concerns about immigrant safety and called for the South African government to take action. Emeka Johnson is the African Diaspora Forum spokesperson. He joins us now here in studio to discuss this. Mr. Johnson, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, host.
Firstly, I would like to hear from you. You heard the mayor previously suggesting that the city will only go after people that are legally here, that has got no papers, and they want to make sure that they do not commit crimes. What do you say to that, and is that perhaps not justified?
If it's that the way he said it, it's justified. But that's not the way he said it. We'll have a clip of what he said, which is contrary to what you said just now. If he said that, Amnesty International would have indicted him, ADF wouldn't have indicted him, and AU wouldn't have indicted him. Even the Minister of Home Affairs disagreed with him. A cross-section of people all over. In fact, I think it's only Mashaba that has that idea that criminality in Johannesburg has to do with foreign migrants.
Now, we've seen that the communities here in Rosettenville, they went after foreign nationals who they say were dealing in drugs and also running brothels, prostitution brothels and rings. Now, if indeed that is the case, even what's happening in Pretoria, what is your message to those who obviously are not towing the line?
Actually, well, that's not the case in the first place. We're on the ground, and we found out that that's the case. The case here is actually an outright attack, xenophobic attack on people. And we're not saying that there are no miscreants or criminals among the migrants, but they're infinitesimal. How many migrants are in South Africa in the first place? And look at the statistics. How many of these people have been convicted and arrested and convicted? That's where you get your statistics. They are there. But I mean, but South African government has the necessary institutions and they can activate to nail these people and let the laws of the land take position.
What's your reaction to what's currently happening in Pretoria with the illegal march or the march against illegal immigrants in Pretoria?
Well, that march has been planned over time. We tried to intervene by meeting the Mamelodi Residents Association, but they agreed initially. We wanted to meet them under the umbrella of the Mamelodi police station, but at the last minute they reneged. We wanted to know their concern and see how we can come in to add value to their concern. We are not saying they don't have concern, but we are saying that mob action is not the solution. You see, even if they do citizen arrest, it's legal. Do citizen arrest. If you see any person committing crime, but our own grudge is that criminality does not have nationality. If you're a criminal, you're a criminal. And the laws of the land should take position.
Yes.
Yeah, that's our agreement. But you see, the fears now is that this thing will snowball. We said, we started shouting and crying since Mashaba's statement last year. We picketed against Mashaba. We wrote an extensive memorandum, which we circulated even to the presidency. We escalated it to the presidency and even to the parliament, the premier. But we are not listened to. We tried to inform, we tried to interdict this march, but it will look as an affront against our host community. But who had expected South African well-meaning organizations to have interdicted this? Because what is actually happening, the news on the ground now is that even schools are closing, calling parents to come and take their words. And the fears that this thing will escalate to the extent touching some areas like Hebrew, Berea, Yeovil, in no time today.
Now, yesterday, the Home Affairs Minister dismissed reports that the latest incidents are xenophobic. And on the other hand, you believe, though, that they are. What makes you think that they are? This
has been a problem with we and South African government. The inability to take the fact that this is xenophobic. Right from the King Zwelithini statement, we've been looking at it as xenophobic. The Interministerial Committee or the Parliamentary Committee on that issue, we met them. We presented our memorandum, telling them that they try to deny it. I mean, this is denialism. It doesn't work well. Ask the common man on the street. Even the protesters themselves have called it xenophobia.
But,
and the minister is saying it's not xenophobia.
But on the other hand, the concerned resident says that they are not targeting legal foreigners here in the country. What they are saying, they are going after drug dealers or people that Africans that are illegally in the country. What do you say to that? And of course, that march is dubbed the March Against Illegal Foreigners. Did you agree, by the way, to that name when you were discussing it?
Look at this. The mob does not come and ask you where are your papers. Are you documented or not? Some even South Africans fall prey. If you look like a Nigerian, like you might be hit on the road.
Yes.
So it's not like the mob will ask you, are you documented or not? Mob is mob. They don't, and they don't have the training, the wherewithal to know a documentation which is valid or not. You see, and so it's not in their place to go fishing out for illegal immigrants. We have it actually compromises the immigration job.
Yeah. We have seen counterattacks now with Nigerians attacking some South African businesses, MTN in Nigeria. Do you condone that sort of thing? And should there be that counterproductive activity happening?
We don't condone anything violent, any form of violence. We don't condone it. But largely the clips I've seen, which I have, about what happened in Nigeria, is actually civil rights organizations, students' union, issuing peaceful protest. I have it. They went to the embassy in Nigeria, South African embassy, and issued a memorandum. I have the clips. I can show you. It wasn't violent. But I heard that MTN was attacked. But, you know, like every other protest, miscreants take opportunity, like what is happening in South Africa. Miscreants take opportunity to attack and loot. But I believe there was no looting in MTN. Maybe it was vandalized.
Yeah. Do you believe that South Africa...
no life was lost.
Do you believe that South Africa and Nigeria relations are on a knife edge?
Yeah, our relationship have not been the way it was supposed to be. I happen to be a student of foreign relations. We used to have pally a lot. Even during the apartheid era, we were frontline state without being in southern region. But since South Africa got independence, they are not treating Nigeria the way they are as a big brother.
How do we resolve this?
It's at governmental level, definitely. I can see they are trying to placate it at diplomatic level, but the real job they are supposed to do, they are not doing it. For example, South Africa should start in the education system, inculcating and teaching, putting in their curriculum, the actions, activities, the contributions of countries like Nigeria to the fall of apartheid.
Mr. Johnson, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here, and all the best of luck.
Thank you, man.
Stopping this thing. Emeka Johnson, he's the African Diaspora Forum spokesperson, joining us here. Very concerned. There's even concerns that this might spread. So we're asking you the question, South Africa, Nigeria relations, are they on a knife edge? We would like to get your views. There's also a question we want to pose to you. Let's take a look at what you have to say. This one coming from Akinlolo says, so why not attack the criminals and stop attacking foreign nationals and stealing from them? Hungry fool, says Akinlolo. Khosi says, violence begets violence. Not surprising that Nigerians are responding with threats of violence themselves. So says Khosi. Christina says, how about some facts? How many legal Nigerians in South Africa? What do they contribute? What do they send home? Fair amount of questions there from Christina. This one from Agabu says, Africans will boycott brands in a brand in the near future. Mark my words, that's probably South African brands Agabu is referring to. These are some of your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. Let's now take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. And we start off with the economic freedom fighters. The EFF in Parliament has tabled a motion to amend the property clause in the Constitution. The motion, which is expected to be debated in the National Assembly next Tuesday, has been brought by the EFF Chief Whip Floyd Chivambo. Then, disaster management teams in KwaZulu-Natal will remain on high alert. This as the Cooperative Governance MEC Nomusa Dube says this after the follows flooding in the north of the province. Look at that water flowing there. And then finally, the Minister of Social Development, Batabila Dlamini, says that she will return to the Constitutional Court to request an extension of the South African Social Security Agency, SASSA's current service provider, Cash Paymaster Service. And remember that that contract was declared illegal and invalid by the Constitutional Court. What do you make of all of that? You can find those stories on our Facebook page. and the SABC News website. We'll take a short break. We continue our discussion and our focus this morning. South Africa-Nigeria relations, is it on a knife edge? Stay tuned.
This Ford Cougar thing is becoming a hot potato for them, excuse the pun.
US carmaker Ford has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire, and
it also formally issued a recall in South Africa.
Ford needs to take accountability.
We'll work with our dealers and try to come up with a way that satisfies them.
Now, remaining with the story of the day, which focuses on the recent protest action by Rosettenville residents here in Johannesburg, as well as Pretoria residents this morning, where a number of properties, mostly belonging to foreign nationals, have been torched. We also understand that the police in Nigeria are reportedly guarding offices of the mobile phone giant MTN in the capital Abuja, after protesters against the xenophobic attacks here in South Africa tried to storm it yesterday. Now, this after the offices were attacked. Now, with South African government expected to meet the African Union ambassadors today, we're now joined by Mr. Issa Komu, an African analyst, to give us a perspective on what this means in terms of relations between South Africa and the rest of the continent. Mr. Komu, a very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you.
South Africa and Nigeria's relations, is it on a knife edge, you think?
Ooh. Well, basically, it's not on a knife edge, but it is competitive. I mean, It's always been so from the time of ex-President Mandela. You remember that Nigeria and South Africa actually, they had their tiff to the point that Nigeria actually did pull out of the Africa Cup, the CAF Cup.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's always there. So these are just sort of peers who are actually struggling for supremacy and trying to prove the other being useless, I suppose.
Now, you heard the earlier clip that we played with the Joburg mayor, Herman Mashaba, denying claims that he may have fueled the latest protests aimed at foreign nationals. What's your take on that?
Well, this is a very sensitive issue. And with this issue, anything can trigger a reaction. Even us talking here can trigger something, so we've got to be very careful. Yeah, but Mashaba actually touched a very salient issue and a very important issue. Yeah, what he was talking about, although he did not tell people to go and do what they did, but it's an issue that had been left standing that has been neglected, and basically now coming to talk at a time when issues are charged, and they're charged not because people don't like foreigners, but because of the economic situation of the country. Yeah, it's a situation where people are actually sort of competing for scant resources, which is work. Yeah, and so that basically would be very careful. But it's a sign of people have been very, very lax with tackling this issue.
Now, we know that the Nigerian government has came out and asked the AU intervention in this issue because they think that the South African government is not doing enough. The minister came out yesterday and he said that, there's ongoing discussions and the South African government is talking to their partners. What do you make of this, and is there perhaps an intervention that can assist here from the African Union perspective?
The Nigerians are grandstanding, trying to prove that the South Africans are incompetent. Yeah, but this issue, basically, the government, what it's doing, although it's late, they're doing a lot because basically the xenophobia itself, I mean, to say that when you I put it in inverted commas, simply because if you talk of xenophobia, I mean, we've got about half of our staff at Channel Africa, they are foreigners. If that was xenophobia, we should be on their throats now, punching them. And people would be, Nigerians, Ghanaians living in Sandton and on the suburbs would be punched. But you find that this sort of animosity is actually sort of restricted to a certain sector, not even of the city, but of a certain class, yeah? And there you've got to look at the dynamics which actually spur this animosity, yeah, within those classes. Basically, it's conformity in the classes. Yeah, and this other thing about the gentleman who just left here talking about the crime against foreigners. But I would like to say something. I've lived in Rosettenville. I lived there for about 4 or 5 years. And in that time, and that was about 2005, 2006. And at that time, I did engage Nigerian pimps in Darren Street and ask them why are they doing it. I've done it myself. And the answer was this, that everybody's doing it in the world.
Yeah.
But I think the Diaspora Forum have got to come up to their people and tell them they should stop doing these things.
That's right.
Yeah, because they're predominantly, it was Nigerians, and I've done it. And not only that, in the complex that I was staying, there's a Nigerian neighbor who was there upstairs. Right now, he's in Brazil in jail for drugs. So basically, we've got to be realistic, and actually sort of accept that this thing does take place, and the Diaspora Forum has got to talk to their people too.
Right, our reporter standing by, Criselda Lewis. Criselda, very good morning to you. Let's find out what is happening where you are.
Well, a very good morning to you, Elvis. Well, the situation has certainly turned quite violent already here in the Pretoria CBD. You would recall, of course, that the concerned residents from Mamelodi had indicated that they were going to begin their march from the old Patco bus depot, which is in Marabastad, not too far from where I am here at the moment. And what we understand took place just a few minutes ago is that some of the protesting locals had come towards this direction. And if we could just move towards here, you would see they have managed to topple over 2 of the mobile kitchens that are in this area, where foreign nationals are using them to serve the community in this area. You could see here also towards this direction some of the emergency services also leaving now. I'll just take you a bit closer to where this is at the moment. The fear at this point, Elvis, is that these gas cylinders that are here at the moment, emergency services have been telling us to move away from here because they fear that there is a gas leak. But just a few moments ago, the protesting locals had come towards this direction and toppled over what seems to be now 3 of these mobile kitchens that some of the foreign nationals use to serve the community in this area. There is quite a strong police presence already within this area, Elvis. What we do know is that the situation where my colleague Sipho Steerman has been crossing to live from in Atteridgeville turned violent this morning. So there's quite a large police presence. The road where I am here had been closed off since very early this morning, and police were saying they're not allowing any media or any of the locals and the foreign nationals to come through this area. Driving towards this place where I am, Elvis, I also managed to see that some of the foreign nationals are also gathering in large groups, trying to stay safe. When we spoke to them, they said that they're trying to stay in large groups to ensure that the violence is not directly targeted at them. What we've also noticed is that some of the shops, the foreign-owned shops within this area in the Pretoria CBD have been closed as well. Let me take a bit closer to see perhaps we can get any more of what is taking place here. What we do understand is that the people, or rather the foreign nationals who have been using these mobile kitchens to serve this community here have fled this particular area, and police are now saying that they're going to deploy many more police officers throughout the Pretoria area, because it's not known at this stage exactly how many locals will participate in this action that has been called for by the Mamelodi concerned residents, because the area where I am now wasn't expected to have any protesters coming from this area, and we expected many of the community to come from Mamelodi as well as Atteridgeville, where of course we saw in Atteridgeville over the past week there'd been those violent scenes, several shops that had been looted as well, and the community indicating that they were going to continue with their protest action in Atteridgeville, in Mamelodi and other areas as well. If I can just bring you up to speed there, Elvis, about how all this started. You will recall SABC News was in Rosettenville, where we saw the community up in arms over what they called foreign nationals who were involved in prostitution rings and the running of drug dens in Rosettenville. We saw that community come up in arms saying that they've been complaining to police for a number of years about the deteriorating state of their community, and it indicated that they were now going to take the law into their own hands. There had been fears back then already that there would be the very same copycat action which would be taken at a number of other communities. So we've seen this now spread to Attridgeville and to Mamelodi and sections of Pretoria West, and to what we're seeing here today, where the concerned Mamelodi residents have indicated they will march not too far from where I am here at the old Patco bus depot. They'll march from there and march to the Department of Home Affairs and hand over a memorandum of demands. We're not sure if the Home Affairs Minister, Malusi Gaba, will accept that memorandum of demands. But from this area where I am at the moment, let me walk towards this area with you. I'll ask let's just walk towards this area, and you'll see many of the people are trying to just pack up from where they are at the moment. We'll just walk towards this direction, and you'll see here some of the bins that have been toppled over in the streets here as well. And some people also packing up some of their goods here. I'll just ask him I'm not sure if you're able to hear him. Are you packing up your stuff now? Oh, where are you from?
Limpopo.
You're from Limpopo, okay. He says he's from Limpopo, but what you can certainly see here behind me is some of the hawkers who have been in this area are now packing up over fears of violence that may spiral up again towards that direction there. Let's move towards that direction. You'd see another police vehicle moving through this area, but the situation hadn't been like this just a few minutes ago there, Elvis, because the large police presence that there was here certainly did indicate that the police are going to have their hands full here in Pretoria as well as Attridgeville, where they need to monitor the situation, and the neighboring townships as well. You talk about your Mamelodi, where we've also heard that residents are saying that they're also going to take to the streets, saying they're tired of foreign nationals who they say have taken over their communities, are selling drugs and running prostitution rings, and not forgetting one of the other key issues that the Mamelodi concerned residents had raised when they indicated that it seemed as if South African business was prioritizing, or rather giving jobs to foreign nationals and overlooking South Africans. They saying they too are unemployed, and they would want perhaps people in the hospitality industry, where we see quite a number of foreign nationals who are in the employ of these hospitality businesses. They're saying they also want to be employed. They want government to take up this issue. Legislation needs to be changed to ensure that they do get jobs, and many of the people here, you can see also towards that direction, are really looking in awe about what's going to take place here. They don't understand where to move on from here at the moment. This tent also, you see, also just moved from where it was, and the situation quite tough in this part, I must point out. You see one of the other hawkers there as well, who sells in this area, also packing up her stuff at this point. So we'll continue to monitor the situation here. We understand that march will get underway at 11 o'clock. That's at the old bus depot, not too far from where I am here in Marabastad, Elvis. And my colleague Sipho Steelman is also on the other side as well, trying to ensure that we've got all angles covered for you, and how police really plan to try and contain the situation here as this march gets underway.
Thank you so much, and you'll give us an update on that story a little bit later. That was Griselda Lewis there on the scene. As you see, the violence is spreading. And my guest this morning is Komu, African specialist analyst here in studio with us, as well as the producer of Spotlight on Africa. Now, Mr. Komu, listening to that, it seems like the violence is going to spread. She indicated that there is sporadic incidences in some places already.
Oh yes, the violence is spreading. But as you can see, that one of the victims of the violence was from Limpopo. When you ask him where is he from, he's from Limpopo. He's not a foreigner, and he's been a victim of the violence. So basically, the violence is going to come and it's going to spread, and it's sad that what's going to happen is this: that disgruntled elements are going to take over. As far as the protest is supposed. There are genuine concerns, but those genuine concerns have been overtaken by other unscrupulous elements and other disgruntled elements and other very bitter elements. Yeah, the thing is when people are bitter, that's where things go wrong.
The fight for scarce resources was also highlighted by our reporter. Is this perhaps a genuine concern by the concerned residents of Attridgeville?
It is a genuine concern. I mean, if we listen to Minister Gaba when he talked about the past violence which took place. It was this that a factory in Durban, due to its labor practices, it was going to and employing immigrants. And they're doing so because basically that's the labor market. They're going to take people who are most vulnerable, or people who can actually take the job for lesser money. And you end up having a majority of migrants. And that itself is a contradiction. And it's not only a contradiction when it sort of deals with migrants. If we remember the security strike that we had about some 5, 7, 8 years ago, those certain security guards who never went on strike, and the end results about over 80 non-striking security men were thrown out of moving trains. So you see that in the labor market, you've got to be very careful. And also in Western Cape, where the fruit area, I mean to say that the people in the Western Cape, the deciduous fruits, they go as far north as Limpopo to come and actually sort of hire Zimbabweans for less. Whether they've got, whether they're legal or illegal. And again, you've got another migrant population which comes from Eastern Cape, and also the local. So people have got to be very careful. The government has got to be very careful. Legislation has got to play a part. Just for information, Mozambique expelled about 2,800 Tanzanians. That was about this week. I think this week. And again, Cameroon has expelled about 500 illegal Nigerians back to Nigeria. But then the Tanzanian government issued a statement, was it yesterday or day before yesterday, saying that from now on they're going to start implementing the work permit. And again, about 3-4 months ago, Tanzania expelled Kenyan teachers, although they've got a freedom of movement within East Africa. So basically, the issue of work in the African continent is a real thing. We should not just look at it as xenophobia. It shows itself as xenophobia. It shows itself as kids drowning in the Mediterranean. But I think that in our neoliberal environment, of the market economy, we forgot about that, and that we are paying a price for that.
Is this perhaps the rise of populism in Africa, or the rise of self-preservation?
I won't think it's the rise of self-preservation. It's a natural thing which comes up. I mean, basically, for the first time, we find that it's the rise of right-wing politics in Africa. I mean to say the politics of this group which calls itself, South Africa First, and Le Pen's group. What's the difference? It's the same politics, isn't it? And that is it. And one thing which is frightening is that for a long time, these attacks against foreigners, it was actually taking place in the deprived part of the city, or within a class of people who were really marginalized. But now you find the people have got, it's coming up within the middle class. They're organizing, and they're political, and they've got organizational skills. You ask yourself, who are these people? It could be, I'm not saying, some party X has got, is actually feeding into this whole thing. And that party X, it has got a long-term agenda. Let's call it party X. I would not want to be taken to court. What do you think?
These marches, as well as the attacks against foreigners, are they specifically targeting Nigerians from your assessment, or is it wider spread than what we anticipate?
Well, the marches, as they say, they're targeting illegal immigrants and also crime. And truly speaking, between me and you, what they're saying about the crime of prostitution, of drugs, there's an element of truth in it. And I think the governments and the embassies of those countries where these people come from, they've got to come up, admit, and actually tell the people to stop it. But then again, now you find that with the whole thing, they're actually taking advantage, the organizers, of the disgruntlement of the South Africans. It's a force, which they've actually captured, and now they're using it, against the immigrants to get at the government. But basically, the government went to sleep.
During the apartheid struggle, a number of our viewers has indicated that we were assisted by the frontline states, even our guest earlier this morning. But what sort of picture does this now give South Africa?
Well, it gives a picture, well, it's a sad picture, but again, the whole thing is being misrepresented. I grew up in the frontline states. I grew up in a foreign state. We were not citizens of that country. And we lived according to the laws of that country, and the laws are very specific. We just could not change jobs. We worked with a permit, And even South African refugees, when they were there, they could not work. To work, they had to get Tanzanian government permission to work.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. But another thing is that South Africans, they also they're law-abiding. Yeah, it's the liberalness of our laws. Like even Tanzania, they liberalized their laws. Tanzania was a country which actually said, the laws did not allow immigrants, to come and deal in the retail sector and the informal sector. That they were very clear. I remember there was a President Msuya when he said that, not President Msuya, Prime Minister Msuya, Minister of Finance, way back in the 90s, 80s. He said that the informal sector is a safety valve for Tanzanian unemployed. Now, if you're going to get unemployed from Karachi, from everywhere coming in that safety valve and competing for those resources, you're going to get trouble. In Tanzania, if you go there as a businessman, there's a threshold at which you've got to come and invest. It's so in Botswana, it's everywhere. So I think the South African government has got to revisit its own laws. Yeah, the retail sector and the informal sector is a very sensitive sector. It's a safety net. My
guest this morning, Mr. Issa Komu, joining us, so you can also join in that conversation. Let's take a look at what you have to say, and join you in the conversation on the question that we're asking you this morning. What do you make of all of this, the protests that we've seen in Pretoria, as well as the relations between South Africa and Nigeria? There's the question now, SA-Nigerian relations. Is it on the line? Knife edge, you heard Mr. Komu. What's your take? Let's take a look at what you have to say on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. This one coming in says, from Francis, says, this shouldn't even be a poll question. After the so-called protesters are even stealing the SABC reporters' phones and equipment, it tells you a story, so says Francis. This one from Christina says, now here the question she posed a little bit earlier, Mr. Komu. She asked the question, how about some facts? How many legal Nigerians are in South Africa? Do we have the numbers? What do they contribute and what do they send home? Let me test you on that particular one. Do we have the answer to that one?
Well, Gaba answered that question, didn't he? When he said that, Minister Gaba, when he said that if, that was yesterday, he said that if he had the numbers, the statistics of illegal immigrants, he'll be able to answer that. But as far as the legal ones, they know them.
Yes.
There are a lot of remittance. But let me say something about this whole thing. You know, there is an element of people coming to South Africa into business. The underground, there's a mafia taking place.
Yes.
There was a mafia which came from Karachi way back in the early 90s, and they came via Durban. And that mafia actually came in with the Mandrax. Durban was the biggest port of Mandrax. Yeah, and then they did that thing on the underground. They collected their money and then they established their legal business. Yeah, there is another mafia which comes from Section X of the African continent, which is actually dealing with issues from Brazil. Yeah, and now these guys are actually sort of amassing capital, and after that they actually get into the legal business. So basically, I think we should not be simplistic about this thing there.
It's much bigger than what we think.
It's much bigger than what we see. These things, it's an organized gang. It's a mafia, basically.
King says, this is purely xenophobic, Newsroom. Do the shop owners of which they loot also sell drugs? Black South Africans are fighting the wrong battle. Well, so says King. Well, I tell you what, you can participate in the comments coming through to us at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. Let me know what's on your mind. There's the question, South African-Nigeria relations, is it on a knife edge? Let me know. Mr. Komu, just in closing, the situation currently between South Africa and Nigeria, does it really call for a political solution or something else?
Well, it calls for understanding, and it also calls for the two countries to work together. The Nigerians should actually help us by actually talking to their people also. I mean, I wouldn't say that South Africa is. No, the Nigerians should actually talk to their people also. Yeah. Honestly, Ogame and Niger man, I lived in Britain with Nigerians in the same house, and I know them very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Komu, thank you so much for your views and joining us here at studio.
Thank you very much.
That was Mr. Issa Komu. He's the producer of Spotlight on Africa on Channel Africa, as well as African specialist looking at these issues. Let's now move on to other news here in South Africa. President Jacob Zuma has condemned the act of violence and called upon citizens and non-nationals to unite against crime. The president has called for unity in bringing the perpetrators of crime to book. President Zuma will lead the fight against crime in order to promote safer and more stable communities in light of several complaints from communities about drug trafficking and other serious crimes which cause fear among many residents in the country. The president visited Nyanga in Cape Town 2 weeks ago, and one of the serious crimes hotspots in the country. He's also expected to visit other communities to obtain a first-hand account of the problems faced on the ground with respect to crime. Meanwhile, police in Nigeria are reportedly guarding the offices of the mobile phone giant MTN in the capital Abuja after protesters yesterday attacked the offices against the attacks the xenophobic attacks they call it in South Africa, and tried to storm it. Now, according to media reports, the offices were sealed off and no one was being allowed to enter the building. Here in South Africa, the organizers of today's march against illegal immigrants in Pretoria have given the assurance that their protest action will be peaceful. That was yesterday. The organizers of today's march say they've had it with the illegal foreigners, allegedly dealing in drugs and prostitution.
Timejo Latunji, an Abuja resident who witnessed the incident, said the incident was a reaction to xenophobic attacks against Nigerians in South Africa. Anti-immigrant violence has flared sporadically in South Africa against the background of near record unemployment, with foreigners being accused of taking jobs from locals and getting involved in crime.
This thing should stop. The first time I heard about it was around 2008, and I have a neighbor who had that issue. He had a business South Africa, and up till now he hasn't even planned of going back. Up to, in fact, you don't even dare mention South Africa near him due to the effect. And if this is a country that has gained a lot from Nigerians, and due to the bilateral relationship that is between them, you don't expect such things to happen.
Protesters stormed the regional head office of MTN, the biggest South African company active in Nigeria, and stole customers' phones, vandalized equipment, and attacked customers.
Some customers that are inside, they boggle them and collect a lot of things from them. They collect phones, laptop. Meanwhile, some customers, they outside here, I am complaining about that.
The incident coincided with a visit by MTN chairman Putumantlego to the Nigerian capital to see Vice President Osinbajo, who has been in charge for the last month for President Muhammadu Buhari, who is absent on sick leave. This week, at least 20 shops believed to be belonging to immigrants were looted in South Africa's capital. Police refused to say if the attackers were specifically targeting foreigners. Nigeria and South Africa, the continent's two largest economies and preeminent diplomatic and military powers, have a volatile relationship.
Now, the news media plays a significant role in shaping public opinion. The media has a responsibility of providing factual coverage which does not perpetuate myth or stigma. However, we as the media does not always live up to this expectation. A government commission report released last year blamed the mainstream media for sensational news headlines as a contributing factor to the KwaZulu-Natal deadly outbreak of violence against foreign nationals. As you can recall, 7 people were killed and about 5,000 others were displaced between March and May of 2015. The probe was headed by Judge Navi Pillay, a former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. So how has the news media performed in covering the events or the recent protests that resulted in the destruction of foreign-owned property in Rosettenville and Mamelodi? To discuss this, we are joined by a Nigerian journalist based here in South Africa, Solomon Ashoms. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thanks a lot. Good to be with you.
First and foremostly, what has been your impressions of the media coverage that of the recent spate of attacks, especially here in Rosettenville, in Johannesburg, and of course now in Pretoria?
I think there's just quite a lot of different opinions through the media. You know, sometimes I feel we're dealing with the symptoms and we're not really going down to the root of the problem. And there seems to be a case of being subjective. Either you are on this side or you're on that side. You know, locally, just following some of the media news from different platforms, you would sometimes feel like this is a protest that is targeted, you know, at Nigerians or foreigners these are the reasons and all that. But it's a bit confusing sometimes. And for me, it's always, what is the root of the problem? How are we trying to make news and release news content that is going to be informative, educative, and try to challenge people to look at it from different perspectives and to take action? Because that's very important. And then now we have the Nigerian media just a few days ago started reporting it, a lot of the websites and mainstream media. And trust me, in Nigeria, if you go there right now, it's totally a different news. It's more like, you know, all the Nigerians in South Africa, there are about 800,000 Nigerians in South Africa are being, you know, chased out of the country. That's the perspective that the news there. I've gotten like phone calls and messages on my phone. How are you with your family? Are you okay? You know, I have to explain to them that, look, this is an isolated incident.
Yes.
You know, this is not something that's just everywhere, you know. And also because Nigerians are very emotional and sentimental when it comes to South Africa because of the history, because of the role that Nigeria played, you know, in really helping, you know, the ANC and the PAC to deal with the situation here. So there's an emotional attachment.
Yes.
And then that was in the 90s and the 80s, but now everything has turned and they feel like, look, we should be brothers, we should be having a great relationship, but we don't. You're chasing us out of your place. I mean, it's a fact that there are Nigerians that are in South Africa that are drug dealers. You know, I've met a few of them, you know, in Sunnyside, Acadia, or in Hillbrow, you know, all over the country, they're there, you know, illegally, they're here illegally. But we need to ask ourselves, you know, a lot of questions. How do they operate? How have they been able to do that?
And how much do they make of the population that's here? Is it 10%? And if it's 10%?
No, it's not even 10%.
Yes.
You know, most Nigerians here, you go to universities, the campuses, you find a lot of Nigerians. You go to the hospitals. You know, Nigeria has become, you know, the biggest exporter of doctors to South Africa right now. You know, you go to villages down in Polokwane, down in Nelspruit, you see a lot of Nigerians. So we're talking about a very little percentage. Sometimes people go to Acadia or Sunnyside or Hillbrow and they see a little community of Nigeria and they feel, this is Nigerian. So it gives you a wrong picture of the Nigerians that are resident in South Africa, because there are a lot of professionals that are everywhere in different fields.
You've said earlier that when you go to Nigeria and you look at the newspapers there, it seems like Nigerians are being evacuated out of South Africa. Is that perhaps the emergence of fake news that we've seen?
Part of it. Part of it is the emergence of fake news. I've actually seen a few fake news websites already trying to use this whole incident to try to, you know, divide opinions and divide people. And sometimes it's very important for the media to confirm what is really going on and to get like solid, you know, evidence that, look, this is what's happening. Because they tend to pick it up here and there and put it out there, like the incidents of going to the MTN office in Abuja. You know, that's not, I just came back from Nigeria 6 days ago, you know, and I was right where the whole incident was happening. But, you know, you have to look at it and say, look, how do we have our protest or make our opinion, you know, get out there without really getting to violent perspective?
Now, in the past, the media has been blamed for perpetuating stereotypes against foreign nationals. How legitimate is that concern?
There is a bit of it, you know, and sometimes I want to give the media a benefit of a doubt, because a lot of the writers or the people involved in media have not really been exposed to the continent of Africa to really see what's happening around the continent of Africa. The way the media report incidences around nationals of European nationals or American nationals is different from the way they normally report around African nationals, you know. So there is this stereotype, there is this elements that have been put on, you know, foreigners from Ghana, Somalia, or Ethiopia. This is the way they are, this is how they react. I think we need to really investigate and really get to know these people, really get to know the history, really get to know why they're here. I'm a strong believer, if you're here illegally, you don't belong here. If you're a criminal, you either belong in jail or you go back home. That's just the way that it should be.
How should media houses contextualize violent occurrences without causing panic and calling them xenophobic or the other way around?
I think we need to look at, you know, the causes of this violence. You know, if we have situations where Nigerians are drug dealers or Ghanaians are drug dealers, we need to deal with it as a criminal offense. We need to deal with it and not bring the nationality of that person in there. And sometimes it's difficult not to do that for the media, but we have to learn to do that. This is a criminal offense. You know, anyone can be criminal. You know, it doesn't really matter what
nationality you
come from. You know, so we have to deal with it based on that and not say this is where you find them. You know, they're always there in Sunnyside, you know, selling drugs and all that. I'm not a believer of that. I'm not a believer of all these drug traffickers and all that kind of stuff. But we need to really look at it and try to say, instead of really destroying it and inciting violence and inciting people to take action, how do we help people who actually don't have great perspective on the incidents to be able to make intelligent decisions? So when they take action, it's going to be either through the police, either through the courts, instead of really, going out there and destroying and attacking people, which is not something that we would want to do.
Now, the mainstream news media has no control over social media. The emergence of social media has made it so much wider for any bigot or xenophobe to get online and spread fake news. So how do we do as the media and try and contextualize it and make sure that we get the right message out there?
I think we have to be careful, and we also have to make sure that we pump out the right message over and over again. We have to show some sort of credibility. Because if we give out content, messages that is not really credible and, the reader or the listener, the viewer discovers later is not credible, we're going to lose credibility. So I think a lot of it is about credibility, and a lot of it is also about trying to get the two sides of the story as much as possible. I think we've not been able to speak to the foreigners that are here as much as possible. To the Ghanaian community, the Ethiopian community, the Pakistani community, the Nigerian community. I feel we need to speak to them as much as possible. Whenever we have a conversation, we need to bring the two together, just so we can really understand what's going on. That way, there's going to be a lot of credibility.
Mr. Ashoms, I thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thank you.
That was Solomon Ashoms, a Nigerian journalist. He's based in South Africa, and there you have it. What's your take on it? Let me know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook. There's the question on your screen right now. South African and Nigerian relations on a knife edge. I'd like to get your views. Let's take a look at what you have to say. This one coming from Wendy says, yes, South Africa shows hostility towards Nigeria. I'm married to one, and I've witnessed it and have been fighting home affairs. So says Wendy Kwela. The Flamboyant says, Mr. Kormo just articulated the matter in an outstanding manner. Hashtag respect, says the Flamboyant Leslie. The King says, hashtag xenophobia. The black South Africans should take their fight to the failed system and not to the foreigners. So says King. This one from Luamba, Mali, Ghana says, as long as ambassadors of the African Union don't admit citizens' concerns are genuine and tell their citizens to stop it, it won't help. These are some of your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. You don't want to miss it. We'll continue this discussion in a short while. But let's now go to news that's updated right now. As you know, the recent heavy rains are impacting positively on the country's dam levels. That's the good news. Nationally, dams are currently measuring at 60.5%.
The Val Dam, Gauteng's watering hole. Recent rains have seen an improvement in the dam's levels. By Thursday, it had risen to 81.64%. But although the rain has been good to Gauteng, some dams in other provinces remain below 30%.
A lot of the dams that were even critically low have begun to recharge, though not all of them are above 50% yet. We still have those that are below 40. We still have some that are run about the 28 to 30%. So we are seeing a slow recharge of those dams, but we are hopeful that by the end of the rainy season we should be able to have sufficient water.
Around the Val, locals have welcomed the recent rains. This fisherman says more rain is needed for his fishing business to normalize.
We are so happy about the rain. Before, we could hardly catch fish. Since the rain, things are better.
And it would seem that it will be some time before the sun shines again. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Denisville.
Now, Johannesburg City Power Managing Director Sicelo Kulu has taken leave in the hope of speeding up a forensic investigation of fraud and corruption. Kulu faces allegations of corruption related to the city's R1 billion smart meter tender. The City of Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba, instituted the independent forensic investigation into the entity's tenders earlier this month. In a statement, City Power says its board has approved Kulu's leave pending the finalization of the investigation. It says this decision, or his decision rather, is informed by a desire to diffuse any perceived tensions with the city of Johannesburg. Now, over the past 2 weeks, a debate emerged after some houses in the Johannesburg of Rosettenville and Mamelodi and Atteridgeville, the surrounding areas of townships of Pretoria, were set alight. The debate evolved around the aim of the attacks directed at foreign nationals. Now, some view the latest spate of attacks as nothing more than communities attempting to rid their residents or the residential area of crime. Others say that this is an act of pure xenophobia, which is targeting vulnerable immigrants with the aim of ejecting them from their neighborhoods. Now, to shed some light on the recent spate of attacks on foreigners, we have invited, I hope I pronounced this correct, Ugleza Rodolovic, it's also known as Ugi, to unpack the phenomenon of group dynamics linked to the psychology of economic hardships. Ugi, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you, Alvis. Good morning.
Now, I want to say this as well. You completed your master's by compiling a thesis in the field of sociology, researching group dynamics, and you're also currently a sociology lecturer at University of Johannesburg.
Yes, that's correct.
So, talk to us about xenophobia and the attacks that was flamed under the auspices of under-resources in the area and people fighting against drugs and prostitution. Is that the underlying tensions that would fuel something like this?
Well, what we see is that people typically displace frustration-induced aggression onto scapegoats. And this is the byproduct of social, economic, and political frustrations that ultimately manifests in a hatred or a disliking towards minorities by a majority. We also need to consider that in these contexts, individuals whose attainments are beneath their own expectations typically tend towards wanting to join a collective, such as a mob. And what we see here in this context is that these citizens that are residing in poverty-stricken areas are those that have very little social capital and very little economic capital.
Is that the starting point, though, where people are fighting for those scarce resources, and that is where it starts?
I would say that it is the starting point. I believe that people begin to perceive others as a threat, as taking their own resources away from them. And now, recently, that other individuals, so these concept of the other, the foreign national, is an individual that brings crime in the form of prostitution and in the form of drug dispersion into their community. So I think that it's a contestation of the resources, and it breeds some sort of disliking and contestation amongst individuals. Yes.
Let's take a look at that, especially the group psychology, the mob itself that you're referring to. What leads them to these violent attacks on these foreigners?
Well, what we can do initially, we can classify the mob under a type of crowd that grows under the broader category of a collective. And what a collective develops is something that we call the collective consciousness. And this is a group mind.
Yes.
So what this group mind is some sort of hypothetical mental force that links individuals. So basically speaking, it's a shared set of behaviors and attitudes towards an issue or a problem, whatever that it is that exists. And one of the main factors that mediate the process is to create the creation of this group or this collective consciousness is anonymity.
What does opportunists gain from this mob psychology?
They gain an identification with the group. They gain primarily they gain a sort of cause. At this cause, in this cause, it's very difficult to identify this individual because they become anonymous. It becomes difficult to prosecute people or individuals in large aggregations.
Now, vigilante groups and groups that are accused of xenophobic attacks are usually informal, since there is no documented membership of this person that's staying in the area or working in that particular area that we've seen in Rosettenville. But if these people, the community that would fight against foreign nationals, such as the case in Rosettenville, they become almost a force to reckon with. Does that bring the community together, or does it make them vigilantes?
I believe, personally, I believe that it makes them vigilantes, but they are a force. They have elements that make them very powerful. Because collective membership, or being a member of a collective, increases one's sense of self-worth, which as a byproduct increases their identification with that group. And in increasing one's identification with the group has a high degree of cohesion, which means it's more effective. And if something is more effective, it's more powerful, and it becomes a formidable force. But I don't think it's a sense of community. I think it's a sense of opportunist power
within the group. This violent protest that we've seen over the years, and we've seen service delivery protests also turn violent in South Africa. How much does that speak to our violent past during apartheid and where we are now?
It speaks very strongly to our violent past, because apartheid has almost inculcated a deep distrust of the other, so of that which we view as foreign. And now it has embedded itself into the psychosocial dynamic of South African society. The only difference is that we're now transferring this onto the foreign nationals.
Now, to what degree is this particular situation here in our country unique?
I don't think it's unique at all to South Africa. I think that it's a problem in South Africa, but if we just look at history and we look at the Second World War and the extermination, the persecution, the extermination of Jews was an extreme example of xenophobia. We see this happening now throughout Europe. They're labeling war refugees as a crisis, a migrant crisis. Isn't that disliking or a sort of stigma or stereotype associated with a certain categorization of individuals? And furthermore, we see that this is an increasing sentiment throughout Europe, and particularly we know it's an increasing sentiment in the United States as well now.
Does it come down to the same facts that we are steering here in South Africa in terms of that scarce resource that communities are looking for?
I believe that as the global population grows, we're going to have more and more scarce resources. So I think that this is endemic to the global context. Yes, I do think it's a scarce resource.
Now, I want to go back to the mob, because although we have these formations, they usually don't have an elected leader, but they still a force to be reckoned with. And we identify the opportunities within that particular group. So how does one then deal with a group like that in order to bring some common sense to them?
Well, concerning the emergence of a leader, one of the key personality traits for the emergence of a leader is that of extroversion.
What is that?
Extroversion is when an individual displays competency. So competency is associated with one individual being slightly more intelligent. It doesn't have to be a lot more intelligent, but slightly more intelligent than the average member, have to have a high degree of practical intelligence and a high degree of emotional intelligence. So that's a capacity to read emotional cues. Furthermore, this individual should also be cognizant of one's social network, and that's inclusive of the individual's social surroundings. So all of these people that form that broader social context. And media, because an opinion leader is typically a leader that's using media and that has a high degree of access and a better ability to interpret that media for others, those lower end users of media.
We talk about perhaps a political intervention. We even talked about the African Union intervening in this issue with South Africa and Nigeria, which is on a knife edge, but we haven't talked about the social issues surrounding that and how socially do we resolve these issues?
I think that it needs to be resolved at a fundamental base. And a bit biasly through education. We need to educate people and be cognizant that as the world grows, we've already experienced globalization, that we no longer have nation states that are particular to only certain groups and certain categories, that people are beginning to merge and move from one region to the next and consider themselves endemic to that region. So I believe that we need to consider that we're actually creating a global population now, not something that is a very geographically stratified.
I know it will be very difficult to discern this, but the current march that we've seen in Pretoria, where it's an illegal march against, a march against illegal foreigners, is that a correct definition in terms of where they or how they wanted to identify their target audience? And as we've seen from our reporters, is that it spread beyond that?
Yes. Can we as civilians determine who is illegal and who is legal? I mean, do we have the necessary power, and do we have the necessary power that's granted to us to prosecute or persecute someone for us deeming them as illegal? For all we know, they might be legal, but I think it's a difficult situation. I think that the power should lie in the hands of the state.
Ugi, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in the studio. Fascinating discussion. I think if we had more time, we could have delved into it more, but that's where we got to leave it. That was Uglesa. I hope I pronounced. Is that correct?
Uglesa.
Uglesa. Radolovic. He's a sociology lecturer at the University of Johannesburg, joining us here in studio. So what do you make of all of this? There's the question on your screen. Nigeria and South African relations on a knife edge. Let's take a look at your views on the hashtag, on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. But we'll take a break. We'll be right back after that.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Lomorians Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend, but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Technology is all around us and some can't live without it.
There's also the problem of internet connectivity.
I was speaking to a robot.
It also makes a few governments panic and therefore they block the internet from time to time.
They just banned the internet, which is the source of my livelihood.
For African technology and social media news, join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Probably we should ask the question, is the ICC targeting African leaders?
For the life of me, I would hate to be charged with crimes against humanity. Very few people can deny nor ignore that there are crimes being committed on the African continent at this very moment. Now, we need to be able to hold people to account regardless of where they are from.
South Africa has a body of international law that it's committed itself to, that seeks to counter impunity in the world when it comes to gross human rights violations. In this specific instance, we have a problem. By the way, you must remember that South Africa has a law on extradition and mutual legal assistance that enable us to extradite any fugitive of justice from anywhere in the world so that they can stand trial for whatever crimes.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makhamat. The time has just hit 22 minutes before 11 o'clock. It's a Friday morning and it's a very busy, very heavy news day, what with everything else that's going on around the country as well as across the continent in Nigeria, as you heard earlier on with Elvis. But we're going to try and take your mind a little bit off that heavy stuff and talk about sports, because as big as the news week is, so is the sports week. And to preview the weekend ahead is SABC sports commentator Jody Hendricks. He's also an analyst, and it's been a while since we actually got to speak about Super Rugby. And I've been looking forward to this discussion for a while now. But before we get into that, let's also talk about the other big sporting event happening in Joburg, the Johannesburg Open, the Joburg Open 2017. And the big story there really has been the rain.
Yeah, unfortunate, you know, that the rain had to have the final say on day one yesterday. Hopefully they'll get in some play. I know they started at 6:45 this morning. Obviously Paul Peterson from the USA, he had a phenomenal round, 9 under par, you know, with what was it, 3/4 of play. But I'm also looking forward to some of the South Africans. You know, there's quite a few of them in the lineup. Hopefully can come good in the second on day 2, 3 and 4 and for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, with that said, I mean, the JB Krier is the only South African who's actually right up there, or as close as you can to the leaders. What does this mean? Hayden Porteous, the winner from last year, he's sort of struggling a bit.
Further back,
what's going on with our South African field this time around?
Yeah, I think the course this time, you know, is a bit more difficult. I actually had JB on my show last night, and he said that, you know, the course was a bit daunting. He wasn't used to it, so that's why he struggled on the first day. But he said, you know, it's still a couple of days to go, and he's getting used to it, and hopefully he'll improve. And he also said that, you know, Paul Peterson had a phenomenal round, and if he keeps that up, he could probably be the favourite for this Joburg Open.
It's been a bit of a downer for the organisers of the Open, as well as the golfers themselves. I mean, the amateur golfers missed the Pro-Am. And now this rain-shortened tournament makes it a little more difficult. But I mean, coming into this week, they saw it coming. The weather had been forecast. But surely, even as a golfer, traveling all this way for something as big as this, 206 in the field, I believe.
I think, you know, obviously all eyes are on the golfers, but for me, the unsung heroes really, Kendall, would be the ground staff who made sure that actually they got some golf in yesterday with their training techniques and everything like that. So making it as easy as possible for the golfers to have a phenomenal round.
Yeah, no, I think well done to actually talk about the ground staff, because I mean, it's, we're talking about the flooded bunkers and it's soggy underfoot, very difficult, and they actually teed off in the rain yesterday.
Not the best conditions for one of the major golf tournaments in South Africa, but you know, they have to do what they have to do.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the rugby now. I've been waiting, itching to get to the rugby. Look, I mean, there was a match that kicked it off, but there's one that just finished now, and this for me was probably one of the two big matchups for the weekend. It's the Highlanders hosting the Chiefs. And interestingly enough, that match has just ended, like literally a few minutes ago. And the Chiefs themselves, they did very well against the Highlanders.
The Chiefs are a very well-balanced team, and they've obviously done well in the Super Rugby tournament the last couple of years. Unfortunately, they weren't that lucky as last year because of the Hurricanes and Lions that played phenomenal rugby. But I think the Chiefs are definitely one of the teams to beat. The balance in that team, the backline especially, Kendall, if you give them space, you're asking for trouble. You know, we get basically all of them All Blacks, most of them are All Blacks. So I think, I must say, I was a bit disappointed by the Highlanders. They had a good season two years, the past couple of years. They didn't live up to expectation in this game. I caught some of it early on, and you know, I'm surprised that they couldn't even score a try. And the Highlanders, with the new bonus point system, the Chiefs have got a bonus point by scoring 3 tries.
Well, two things that I picked up in this particular one was the line speed with which the Chiefs defended, as well as some of the decision making between Nima Sopiaga and his scrum off, and it really didn't seem to be doing the trick this time around.
Funny you should mention the defense, because I think that's the one aspect that the Chiefs has improved on over the last couple of years, and especially last year. You know, we all know that they can score points, and you know, it's one thing scoring 36 points in a rugby game, but then you get 30, 32, and on a bad day it could go against you. So they've really brushed up on the defense, and I'm glad you picked that up. I think defense is going to play a crucial role for all the teams in this year's Super Rugby tournament. And then obviously, you know, your key players, your 9, 10, 12, your hookers, are all going to play an important part. And I think that the Chiefs has got that down to the T, with all, especially in the key positions, you know, with experienced players coming through.
Now, talk about the porous defenses. I mean, we look at how the Rebels are. they got, what, 56-18? They were thumped yesterday at home in Melbourne, and the stadium was nearly not even half full. But having said that, that, it seems as if the Blues have sounded a warning to the rest of the teams that they mean business this time around, and they've had a season or two to get used to the new structures, and they're in there with intent on their minds.
A win ratio of 50% last year. Tano Maga said that's going to be their building phase, and I'm excited about this Blues team. I think they are going to be one of the teams to beat. I feel actually sorry for the Cheetahs in Stormers from South Africa who would have to face them away. But the Blues, I think Tano Maga, he is, you know, we all know what he achieved as a player, and I think he's putting that into his coaching systems now at the Blues, and the type of rugby, you know, to put 50 points past the Rebels team that I don't think was that bad actually.
It's not half bad.
In terms of players and their personnel, I expected a bit more of them, but the Blues just outclassed them in every aspect of the game.
Let's talk about the South African franchises, their status, their health. We know that the Kings have had a really rough off-season. But having said that, the big stories coming out of this week is about how Siamtanda Kolisi becomes the Stormers captain. Robbie Fleck has now discarded the whole co-captain thing, and he's the man in charge. Do you think that was the right call?
I think Sia, if you look in terms of the future, Sia is going to be around in South Africa for the next 2 to 3 years. The team's probably going to be built around him. He's a fantastic player. I'm a bit worried about his injuries. We all know that he's a bit injury prone. If he can stay injury free this season, I think he'll be able to lead the Stormers with distinction. And obviously having guys like even Itzebeth, Frans Malherbe, and all those guys around him will just add to him. But it's going to be a baptism of fire. Captaining at Super Rugby level can be difficult, especially if the team starts to struggle. But, you know, we wish him all of the best, and actually looking forward. We'll see what happens tomorrow night against the Bulls. Yeah,
no, let's talk about that. And the Bulls against the Stormers, you know, it's a big South African derby. What can we expect from that particular matchup?
Well, you know, we spoke about rookie captains now. Andre Pollard, also a rookie captain at the Bulls. He'll have the likes of Adrian Strauss and Louis de Jager to fall back on. For me, it's going to start up front. The pack that's going to dominate that game, Kendall is probably going to get the advantage and give space to the back line. I'm very excited, not a bit excited, very excited about the Bulls back line. I think especially if the ball goes wide to Lengo, Ishmael and those players, you know, we could be in for a treat of running rugby. And then obviously we spoke about it earlier, defence. Will the Stormers be able to hold their defence against the Bulls? That I think will start probably with Andre Pollard dictating play at number 10. So probably the game of the weekend, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. After this Highlanders Chiefs match as well, that I was always looking forward to. Just a quick one just to throw in there would be like, it would be very interesting to see how these indabas, these coaching indabas that have been had, the third one was held very recently, how they're going to translate into the field of play, and how that in itself, towards the end of the Super Rugby season, translates into a better box side.
I know that a lot of the Super Rugby teams have put a lot of emphasis, especially on skills, but you know, it's going to take time, and it will probably only see the benefit of that, you know, after game 4, 5, 6 into the Super Rugby tournament. But it had to start somewhere. We know that New Zealand started with their skills upgrade up in 2007, so South Africa is basically 10 years behind, but it's going to take a couple of games. I think for the first couple of games, from a South African perspective, Kendall, we're going to see your traditional South African derbies, the big forwards bashing it up, the back line trying to get ball, the number 10s trying to dictate, and then as the season goes on, I think we'll see those skills coming through from the players.
Okay, let's see if we can talk about the other things that actually have been on my mind for a while. We've got a massive matchup in the PSL. Bidvest Vets travelling to Loftus Versfeld against Mamelodi Sundowns. But before that, we've got a match happening in Wellington where the Proteas are going to try and get their own back against New Zealand. They just lost the second of the 5-match ODI series, but now they're going to see if they can fix their batting fragility. Let's talk about the Proteas for a minute or so. Okay. Their bowling attack seems to be, you know, there and thereabouts. This is ahead of the Champions Trophy, but the batsmen are struggling. The unit as a unit, even JP Dumini was talking about how the batting unit is not coming to the party. What are your thoughts around the Proteas ahead of June the 1st to June the 8th?
For me, it's the first time in a while that I'm actually quite excited about our bowling attack. I think the problem in the second ODI that they lost was the conditions. I don't think that the bowlers adapted to the conditions that well, and you know, that put them on the back foot a bit. I'm also a bit worried. You'd like to see your top order get some runs and not depend on your lower order. You know, Polokwane did it in the first game where he hit the 6. You know, asking him to do it every game. What are you expecting from your top order then? So maybe 1 or 2 selections that we need to look at the top of the order. But who do you leave out? You know, Fafi is a senior player, Abi de Villiers is a senior player, Amala is a senior player. Quinton de Kock on the day can destroy any batting, any bowling attack. So it's tough questions for the...
You talk a little bit about Petlukwa. He missed a couple of shots. Some of his shot selections in this particular match were not so great. Neil McKenzie, the batting coach, should be spending a little bit of time on helping him out and getting him up to speed, shouldn't he?
Also, remember, Andile Polokwane is only starting his international career, so this is...
And he's a youngster?
Yeah, so, you know, experience will count for a lot. If he did this, say, in 2018, a year from now, there could be question marks about his batting, but, you know, I think the experience that he gained batting in those conditions in the second ODI Kindle will only benefit him in the future. We saw what he did in the first game, so I think that it came down to experience. If we had a guy who had played 2, 3, 4 seasons of international cricket, then, it could have been a different story. Yeah.
So excited about the Proteas, excited about Bidvest Wits against Mamelodi Sundowns. So that's going to be a very interesting matchup.
It's been raining goals in the PSL, especially if you look in terms of Wits and SuperSport United. Obviously, it's going to be a tight game. I'm a bit disappointed the way Sundowns has gone about it in the PSL and not taken the form that I've shown on what they've been doing in the continent and in the world, for that matter. You know, they've
won their matches.
Yeah, in different you know, results for me. Yeah, in the PSL, and I think they need to start dominating and get to the top of the log and stay there, because they are by far not the best South African team, the best African team, as we know.
But hold up, Jody. I mean, I think you're being a little harsh. Look at this young man, Pesitao. He's been absolutely talismanic. He's definitely one for the future. They should nurture him, keep him going. But Sundowns came back from their exploits on the continent and started winning their matches. They're playing catch up. They're really right up there. They're really knocking on the door. They're just a few points off the top of the log, and they've got 5 matches in hand.
And also remember that Wits, SuperSport United, all the other teams are also winning their matches, so they're putting pressure on the champions. It's one thing being the champion side and having a couple of games, but if your opponents or the other teams are also winning games, you know that the pressure's on you, and that's when the character of your side must come out. And you know, there's still a lot of games to go in the PSL. The 2017, 2016, 17 season is still long, so
6 p.m. Come 6 p.m. tomorrow. Loftus Versfeld. What do you reckon is going to happen in a minute or less?
I think obviously goals will be expected, especially the way that Wits has been playing. I'm sure Gavin Hunt would have studied the Sundowns team. I'm sure Pizzo would have done his own work. So I'm going to be controversial and say a draw.
A draw?
A draw. 2-2.
A 2-2 draw. Okay, at least some goals for fans, but there you have it, Jody.
2 of the best sides in the PSL, Kendall, so, you know, I think they won't give each other inch, and I think it's the spoils are going to be shared at the end of the day.
Fantastic.
I hope for a win, but my gut says a draw.
Who will win for who?
Let's go with the champions.
Let's go with the champions. Jody sitting on the fence, but also giving us a 2-2 draw for the Bidvest Wits Mamelodi Sundowns matchup tomorrow. Thanks very much to the man. It's really great chatting to him. Great value he brings to this show. That's where we leave it for now with the sports. Up next, we'll have a look at the weather forecast.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. Again, we're expecting a lot more rainfall towards the northeastern parts of South Africa and Southern Africa as a whole. Lots of rainfall coming through towards Zimbabwe, Zambia, going towards Angola, as well as over much of Malawi. The southern part of the DRC should also see a bit of rain. For us here in South Africa, Limpopo Province, Gauteng, the Free State and the likes are expecting some heavy rainfall. Some of it could also lead to possibilities of flooding. You see a lot of rainfall again along the west coast of Madagascar for today and tomorrow. Tomorrow for South Africa, the rainfall moves slightly further towards the northern parts, but clear conditions, hot and dry skies are expected along the Western Cape Province and much of the Karoo. In fact, in that particular area, you should look out for possibilities of veld fires because of hot and dry conditions. But like I said, nothing to worry about just yet. The rainfall here in the Western Cape Province usually comes along at the beginning of winter because it is a winter rainfall season area. So yeah, it is coming. Don't be worried there. What you need to be worried about is localized flooding. So if you're going to be along low-lying areas, low-lying bridges, please be extra careful. In fact, do take a look at Johannesburg for the next 3 days. It looks like it's going to be raining up until Sunday, possibly into Monday as well. There's a good chance of rainfall today and tomorrow, 30% chance of showers. So please do be on the lookout there. The rest of this Friday afternoon is going to be quite warm for the western side of South Africa. Springbok at 32, that includes Upington, and Sutherland at around 30 degrees. Johannesburg is around 20 to 22 degrees. Hot weather is expected for Skukuza, but the rest of the northeast is going to be mild with really cool weather. Maputo 27, 29 for Beitbridge, and Harare 26 degrees. Windhoek, do you expect a bit of clouds, maximum of 28 coming your way there. And like I said, widespread showers expected just along Madagascar, especially along the coast. Temperatures also into the upper 20s for most part of Madagascar. Central and the middle part of the African continent is going to be quite hot for Banjul at 40 degrees, but the rest will be normal. 23 towards Addis Ababa, Juba 37, 31 for Luanda. In terms of rainfall, we're seeing some light showers for Morocco, Cote d'Ivoire and Liberia, Gabon included, but the rest are going to be quite dry and hot. And then again, there's a possibility, small possibility of rainfall moving towards Ethiopia and possibly into Eritrea as well. But in general, it's going to be quite a lovely and warm day. Most of the temperatures going as high as 30 degrees for places such as Mecca and Luxor. Cool weather for Baghdad and Damascus, Tripoli at 30. Agadez reaches a maximum of 33 degrees. And the rest of the west coast, a bit of sunshine is expected over the interior, but clouds and rainfall developing along the coast. And you'll also see their temperatures going as high as just around 30 degrees. That's it for your weather. Do stay tuned. There's lots more to come.
So from Port Elizabeth, I eventually left there, joined the circus, as you know, and travelled. I was a singer, I was a race car driver, and I wanted to see what my chances were in America. So I started off with MTV, and I started producing music, because I was in the music business, you know. So I started producing musical acts with Black Sabbath, Guns N' Roses, Motorhead. I became Wine, Women and Song. That was my life in Hollywood.
A pioneer, a Crystal Award recipient, Basil Gold is a force to be reckoned with. For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
It's a rainy Friday here in Johannesburg. Welcome to the final hour, Jumbo Africa. My name is Elvis Presley.
I'm Kendall Makamate.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock today. Kendall, we focus on the protest in Pretoria, and we've heard from our reporter that things are getting out of hand.
100%. We saw how a camera was confiscated and then brought back to the SABC. And one wonders what was going on there. But we also have had reports of looting and barricades around parts of Gauteng. Very sad stuff.
That's why we're asking you the question this morning. On the South African and Nigeria relations. Is it on a knife edge because of the violence? We want to get your view on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. Let me take a look at what you have to say. This one from Paul says, crime has no nationality and cannot be limited to foreigners. Blaming only foreigners for our crime rate is xenophobia.
Jacob says, how can a local South African know whether a particular foreigner is illegal or legal? These attacks are purely criminal.
This one from Credible Link says, no, this march has a secret undertone. If South Africa does not want fellow Africans, simply close your embassies and stop issuing visas.
Idemudia Akere says, can South Africa tell us which jobs foreign nationals took from them? They have to mind what they do, or they will regret soon.
This one from Ola says, a poor man blaming another poor man for his poverty. Meanwhile, the rich keep walking and smiling. Education, my grandmother used to say, is very important. Ola says, education is necessary.
Pathos comes in with, if it is a peaceful march, why looting and beating foreigners? Hashtag xenophobia, hashtag criminal.
Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue, but let's get down to business. Let's take a look at the news headlines. President Jacob Zuma condemns the acts of violence and calls upon citizens and non-nationals to unite against crime. Parliament's SABC inquiry wants President Jacob Zuma to sanction the Communications Minister Faith Mutambi. And recent heavy rains bring hope as the country's dams slowly swell, but that also comes with danger. That's all coming up in a short while, but right now, let's find out from Kendall Makamate. What's lying ahead, the sport weekend, Kendall?
It's already started. Actually started yesterday afternoon with the Super Rugby 2017 clicking into season. Fantastic stuff. It seems like it's going to be another really awesome season of rugby as we get lots of tries and lots of heads head high. We're going to be bringing you a whole lot more a little later. But for now, we're going to go through to Elvis, who's got something for you right now.
That's Kendall with your sports news. But right now, it's happening in Pretoria. We did tell you that. Let's find out from our reporter, Griselda Lewis, what's happening on the ground. A very good morning once again, Griselda. What is going on there?
Well, the situation is very tense here in the Pretoria CBD there. You can see there are a number of foreign nationals who are standing here on the corner of Escalates and Lutik Street, calling for calm as some of the locals are marching towards their direction. You can see they're carrying some sticks and asking for the locals, if we could move towards that direction, you'll see that's where the locals have now gathered. And there is a police helicopter that is hovering in the air. A very tense situation here, as on the one end the locals are standing and on the other the foreign nationals are standing on this direction. Well, we're also seeing scenes now of some of the foreign nationals carrying some stones as well as some machetes. The police are really trying to contain the situation here, and many of the leadership, I guess, who are here with the foreign nationals are calling for calm and trying to push them back. Police now also coming in towards this direction. What you see here is the police line that is separating the locals as well as the foreign nationals. And you must recall helicopter hovering there, just above the crowd. Now one of the police nyalas being brought in to try and separate the two crowds. Most of the foreign nationals who are standing here have got their hands in the air and are basically trying to point out that they're not fighting with any of the locals, but police, as you can see, they are really trying to push back the foreign nationals as far as they can from where the locals themselves have gathered. They're getting onto one of the buckies that you see there in front of me. Bricks, machetes, and a number of other items that we're seeing the foreign nationals carry. We'll take you a bit closer to that now, where police are still trying to contain the situation here. We'll move towards this direction here, where you see foreign nationals are now leaving this part with quite a large police presence. Recall that locals have been saying that they don't want foreign nationals in this area, accusing them of running prostitution rings as well as drug dens, but I can certainly tell you police have their hands full here this morning to try and contain the situation. This is exactly the area, Elvis, where I'd indicated a bit earlier on, where foreign nationals had gathered in groups saying they're trying to remain safe, and now police trying to use all that they can to separate the two crowds. Just point towards this direction now, where you can see these two police nyalas is the only thing separating the foreign nationals as well as the locals at this time. Well, these are live pictures in the Pretoria CBD, where there's now been a standoff between locals as well as foreign nationals. But police for now are saying they're going to try and perhaps bring in more enforcement to try and ensure that the situation does not get out of hand, as it already has so far. While this area where we are has been completely closed off, I'll just take you to the part where the South Africans, the locals themselves, have now gathered. They're now being told to sit down on the opposite end of where the foreign nationals are. They're also basically now also trying to get police to move away from the area where they are. It's going to be extremely difficult to try and police this. You will forgive me there, Elvis. We have the helicopter that is hovering just above us here. This helicopter is also trying to give a bird's eye view of exactly what is taking place here, trying to ensure that the two crowds don't come too close to each other. But it certainly doesn't seem like this protest will be allowed to continue. As we see now, there is quite a hectic standoff between the foreign nationals and the locals. And essentially what the police are saying at this stage, it's going to be too difficult to try and police so many crowds. There are hundreds of locals that did say they're going to participate in this march. And essentially at this point, it's hundreds of those locals versus the few foreign nationals that have gathered here this morning. All together, a Pakistanis, Somalis, as well as Bangladeshis. All of them have come towards this area as well. Very difficult to speak to any of them at this stage. We did try a bit earlier on to speak to the concerned Mamelodi residents who had planned this march, saying that they want government to take further steps or put in legislation that will ensure that South Africans are prioritized when it comes to jobs, that South Africans are able to safeguard their communities, and that South Africans must have a say when it comes to who should not necessarily live in their areas, but the manner in which they conduct business as well. Let's take you to the side now where we see the locals have now stood up, and let's take a look at some of the placards that are here as well. We'll just try as much as possible to get close. You see the police here forming this line to ensure that the locals do not move towards where the foreign nationals are. You see some of those placards. I'm not sure if I can say this one on television, but that one says, "Donald, come and save us. The ANC is not doing anything. Our kids are in danger." Well, that placard just gone down now at this point, but at least I must say what police have managed to do is to keep the two separated at this time, but a very tense situation. Recall that this morning as well, my colleague Sipho Stirman was in Outreachville, one of the areas that flared up after the first incident in Rosettenville, where locals had also gone up in arms, saying that the foreign nationals were responsible for the drug dens being run in that area and the prostitution rings. And now the residents of Mamelodi, Outreachville, Soshanguve and others have now joined this protest as well. They were bussed in here, others came in private cars as well, saying that they're going to march through the streets of Pretoria and make their grievances known. They were scheduled to march to the Department of Home Affairs, but whether that's going to happen now certainly remains to be seen. You see here some of the locals in argument with the police there. They want to push through, but some of the leadership of this march, as you can see there, pushing them back. As some of the locals, the tensions are quite heightened, and both sides at this point, I guess, would need to exercise some constraint if there is not to be a confrontation between the foreign nationals and the locals at this stage. Let me just take you a bit closer now to the other side. I think it will only be fair to do so, Elvis. Let's just move towards this direction now, where you see the foreign nationals are. I'll take you there. Perhaps we'll be able to give you a greater sense now about what you see. They're also forming a line now. I guess that would be some of the leaders of the foreign nationals who are now holding hands in a line and are basically also trying to remain calm as the situation here itself really untenable. Police have their hands full, and you've got a few amongst the both groups, both on the sides of the locals. As let's go and have a listen to what is being said here. There seems to be a live conference here by one of the representatives of the foreign nationals.
The minister mentioned yesterday morning when he was releasing press conference, South Africa needed people with critical skills. So if now someone comes with the critical skills and being employed, it doesn't mean that we taking their jobs. I think the South Africa unemployment rate is about 37%, and that's not due to us. We came here to make ends meet. We came here to work, so we're not taking their jobs. Let's differentiate about the issue of prostitution and the issue of crime and drugs. If now the South African citizen says they want to take the issue on their hand, that won't solve problems. The only thing is to come to a table, negotiate, round table to negotiate, and see now what way forward, what we can do.
Mohammed,
we the Somalis.
The police had asked the foreign nationals to stay at home to avoid confrontation. Yet many of you have come out with bricks and sticks. Why is that?
We've been speaking to the community for the past 3 years to refrain from taking actions on their hand. We also give them some warnings that if they take the law into their own hand, whatever they face is up to them. And as you know, we cannot control them, but we have at least tried our best, people to refrain from taking the law into their hands. And the people who are taking stones in their hands, we've been trying all morning to disarm them. As you can see, I'm sweating. All morning I've been talking to the community. Let's leave the issue of security to the police. And if anything happens, then we will see. So I think the majority of the people, we contain them. So I hope there's not any violence that's going to happen.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. You see there one of, let's just have... Well, you'd see the situation here at this point where the leaders of the foreign nationals, the groups here, let's just turn towards this direction now. I see starting to get rather tense once again, where you see the foreign nationals standing on this side have stones and some sticks in their hands and are essentially denouncing what the locals are saying they're marching against at this time. So it keeps flaring up every now and again as police try to keep the locals away from where the foreign nationals are at this point. Let's just move towards this direction as well, towards this direction, and you see many of them at this point. Why are you carrying bricks?
To defend myself. I'm defending myself. Yeah. They don't care. Who will defend
Everyone is a foreigner somewhere. Everyone is a foreigner somewhere.
We are fighting ourselves. We self-defense. They come in our children. They loot in shops. We never accepted this problem. You can see. We are fighting until they're gonna die.
All right. Some of the complaints from the foreign nationals there, saying that they cannot accept South Africans, despite the challenges that they say they are facing with regard to the accusations made by locals about the running of those prostitution rings, as well as the drug dens in this area, in these different areas, saying they cannot accept that. Asking one here why he's carrying a brick, he says he's here to defend himself. So certainly police are going to have to try and ensure that on both sides, those who are carrying sticks and stones, as well as some machetes, are going to be prevented from doing perhaps or getting into a violent confrontation with some of the foreign nationals here, as well as the locals here on this end. But the situation, I must say, at this stage, Elvis, police are really trying hard to try and keep the locals and the foreign nationals apart. The leadership of the foreign nationals, who are trying to ensure that they remain on the side, are trying to ensure that they move much further back, so that you don't have a situation where there are now violent clashes between the locals and the foreign nationals. As that continues, we still have that police helicopter hovering in the sky. And I do understand that much more police reinforcement will be brought into the Pretoria CBD. I must tell you, you'd see some of the supermarkets there. Let me just take you there just very quickly before we hand back to you again. The supermarkets around this area, all of them owned by foreign nationals, have been shut for the day, and no businesses will be allowed to operate in this area. And I think that's a safety measure that has been taken by the foreign nationals to ensure that no further looting continues. You see others trying to push some of them back at this point. But we've heard calls by the Home Affairs Minister just yesterday calling for calm and calling on South Africans to denounce the activities that we've seen over the past 2 weeks, where the shops have been looted in various areas, and saying that they need to sit and have a discussion about what the way forward will be, as we saw calls from one of the leaders of the foreign nationals gathered here indicating that the best way to try and resolve this issue would be to sit around the table, both the foreign nationals and the South Africans, and discuss what some of these issues are. But we'll certainly cross to you much later on to bring you an update here from the Pretoria CBD, where now police have managed to form a line between the foreign nationals as well as the locals, trying to ensure that violence does not ensue between the two sides. Back to you in studio for now.
Thank you, Griselda. Now, media reports since the beginning of the week have been saying that some foreigners on the outskirts of Pretoria and Johannesburg left their shops after the locals threatened to march in an attempt to have them driven out of their neighborhoods. Now, over the past 2 weeks, some foreign-owned shops have been looted and then burned. Violence erupted as residents here in Rosettenville in Johannesburg and Mamelodi wanted to drive out foreign nationals that they accuse of running brothels and peddling drugs in their communities. Some commentators hold the view that these recent attacks and the past ones have been rooted in the notion that violence in South Africa has become normative. What are the chances then of restoring calm and order in these communities? You've seen the violence happening as we speak. Is reconciliation a possibility? To find out, we are joined by Tsolofelo Sisanda, who is the Community Interventions Manager from the Center for a Study of Violence and Reconciliation. A very good morning to you, ma'am, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
First and foremost, I would like to get your reaction to the violence that we currently see. This march was planned as a march against illegal immigrants, but it has turned violent.
I think that this is really concerning, given what is happening on the ground. However, I think it's the responsibility of all South Africans, or all people that are living in South Africa, to come against this and condemn this kind of acts in our country. Crime and what is happening in our communities affect both non-nationals and South African nationals. So it should actually be an opportunity to say, how can we possibly work together and find solutions, instead of having people who are now sitting at opposite sides of each other, when they could be sitting in the negotiation table and thinking of how they can possibly find solutions to this crime rate and all this.
We've seen the xenophobic attacks in the past. We've also seen service delivery protests that turned violent. Is it perhaps, or to what extent, has violence become normative in South Africa, you think?
I guess what we are getting is that people feel like the only way to get heard is to turn violent. For you to get attention of anybody is for you to threaten violence or to act violently. So I guess it is a call upon leadership, different kinds of leadership, civil society, government, faith-based organization, all stakeholders involved, to say, how do we become responsive? How do we become responsive to some of the issues that are coming from the ground without necessarily resorting to violence? So we need to be thinking of how proactively we engage this. I hope that after today and this, when we have calmness in the country, that we'll be able to continue having these discussions, and this is not just the end, or we're not acting in a panic because of what is happening in the ground, but we can have longer discussions and debates on the ground.
Now, we had a lot of discussions around this during the course of the day on this program, and we wanted to find out exactly why is this happening. Is it because people are just fighting for scarce resources, or are there other things that we are not aware of that communities are fed up with?
Yeah, I guess definitely the fact that the resources are scarce and people really are fighting to make ends meet, it's one of the contributing issues. However, when there is issues like this, you find that communities, there's a lot that is coming out from communities. A lot of their unhappiness that they've been holding for a while all comes and kind of like simmers, comes to the boiling point of some sort. So definitely there's a number of things that are happening on the ground that are all contributing to this.
How possible is it to introduce reconciliatory measures within communities in order to facilitate that between them and foreign nationals in their society?
I think definitely it's something that we need to look at, especially as a long-term role. I think once we have restored some kind of calmness on the ground, there will, because I feel like everybody has a stake on this, for the sake of, so it's not about the othering, whether you are a non-national or a national, but I think for the interest of having communal relationships, there is a need to put all affected parties to a negotiation table and talk about how do we possibly resolve some of these issues.
Now, as an institution that conducts research in this field, what is the role of the South African in this particular case? In order to douse these flames of, some say, xenophobic violence?
I mean, I think that really South Africans should speak out. We should be speaking out against xenophobia on the ground, and I think we need to be very responsible on what are some of the messaging that we are saying, whether at leadership level, that some of the things, whatever the frustrations you might have, it is very good to have positive messaging that you are saying out there, you know, address the problem and not necessarily the people.
We come from a violent past, from the apartheid era. How much does colonialism even and apartheid play when it relates to the current status quo that we see in South Africa?
I mean, definitely violence is a learned behavior. So people have seen it, and at some point it was necessary to fight the government of the day during apartheid and all that. But unfortunately, we haven't gotten to a state as a country where we are talking about that. Maybe it's not necessarily the only way. How do we begin to advocate, and how do we begin to address some of our issues without necessarily resorting to violence? So there's a psychological shift that needs to happen at community level, not only at community level, but as a country. I think these are some of the discussions that we need to start having. And we don't have to have when something erupts. We should be having this even when there's calmness, to say, how do we begin to advocate? What are other mechanisms? How do you get ahead without necessarily resorting to violence?
Is it perhaps time for a foreign relations CODESA?
Definitely, there might be a need for some TRC or CODESA on the ground, where we talk about what are some of these things, how can we possibly deal with some of these issues, or unlearn some of these behaviors that were learned in the past.
Susanna, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you.
That was Tsolofelo Sisanda. She is she's the Community Interventions Manager from the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. That's where we got to leave it for now. Now this week, the economic outlook was, of course, dominated by the 2017-18 budget speech to Parliament last Wednesday by the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan. The economic and political dynamics around the budget speech was clearly the big news of the week. Now, as usual, the budget provides the overall framework for all the key economic issues that we need to address today. We know that the challenge facing the National Treasury in the latest budget has been balanced, and to balance really the state's books. The Finance Minister had to find about 28 billion rand, while simultaneously promote inclusive growth and economic transformation. Any important things to unpack here? So we go again to Professor Raymond Parsons to give us some guidance. He's from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, to provide us his perspective on the budget. Professor, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning to you again, Elvis.
Now, it was a big week for the budget, and before we get into details, what was your overall impression of the budget 2017-2018 delivered by the Finance Minister?
Well, Elvis, I think right at the beginning one must say that the great strength of our Minister of Finance is that he can lift the whole narrative right up to the big picture to explain how the things that we talk about, growth, employment, inequality and poverty, how it fits into the big picture, how we ought to take an inclusive approach, that we ought to collaborate. It's not easy in a divided nation, but he tries to address the best in us through the big picture and says, look, yes, we have challenges. Yes, you may not agree with everything that I'm doing, but nonetheless, here's the big picture. Let's all try and translate it into reality. And I think that kind of economic statesmanship is one of his strong points. even in adverse circumstances. And I think that's important for South Africa, to hear the message at that level and to see how what might be seen as the more mundane things of daily life relate to the big picture and how we can make a difference.
Now, we know that the basic challenge was to create a credible budget that plausibly fits into South Africa's real economic predicament. How do you assess the ways in which he navigated around the problem of enforcing fiscal prudence while still wanting really to encourage the high inclusive economic growth that we are looking for?
Well, Elvis, as we know, the three important pillars which he's had to rest his case on is firstly to control government spending, to control government borrowing, and what to do about taxation in order to fill the remaining gap of about 28 billion rand, which he mentioned. Now, the challenge here and the dilemma is he wants to avoid a debt trap, which is why he has to put up taxes. On the other hand, he wants to avoid a low growth trap. That's the big dilemma. And the big debate is whether that mix in the budget was more or less right, or whether it leans too much one way or another. But we must understand that is the big dilemma that he's had to manage, and all his decisions in the budget, whether it's on spending, borrowing, or on taxes, are really geared to trying to manage that dilemma as successfully as possible, given the constraints that we have.
Did he do enough to give prudence to the call for radical economic transformation, which the African National Congress is calling for? And do the numbers really match up to the rhetoric?
Well, if you go through the speech carefully, and if you listen to it carefully, you'll find that there were more than 40 references in the budget speech to the issue of transformation. I think it's a shared goal. He gave it his own definition. He said, look, we want to unlock growth, we want to unlock jobs, we want to unlock investment, and we need to do these things if we want to transform. And he gave quite a useful mantra. He said, look, if we want to grow, we have to transform. But we can't transform unless we grow. I think that is the challenge which he has tried to meet, and I think that's the challenge which we all face. What is the balance there, and how do we move ahead in the best possible way so that we can facilitate transformation and use growth in such a way that it's fully inclusive, that everyone feels they're part of the economy, and that everyone develops more of a stake to uphold and defend in the kind of economy that we've got.
There was a number of taxes, direct and indirect taxes, that the finance minister announced in the budget in order to balance the books. But where do you think will the shoe pinch most?
Well, I think we've got to understand, if you look at the tax package as a whole, everyone will be affected. I know some elements have been identified, such as the 45% on the super rich and so forth, and the fuel tax. But remember, he's also not allowed for the so-called fiscal drag that is pushing people into higher brackets. There's been hardly any accommodation there. So quite a lot of other people are going to feel the squeeze right across the board, whether it's from direct taxes or indirect taxes. But we should also add to that waiting in the wings, if you look at the documentation, is of course this possibility of an increase in VAT later on, a sugar tax, a carbon tax, an asset mine tax, a gambling tax. All that is in the background. So we've really got to be very careful, because South Africa has a small tax base, and we really need the economic growth that will enlarge that tax base, so that we don't have to raise the tax rates all the time, that we don't have to keep assaulting a small tax base, that we broaden the tax base as we broaden participation in the economy.
How do we broaden that tax base, though? Because there was the issue of VAT that was speculated quite a bit beforehand, and that didn't come to pass, but the minister did mention it afterwards, that they need to look at VAT perhaps, as well as a fuel tax, not a fuel tax rather, but VAT on fuel.
No, well, I think that's what we need to debate, whether it's through the Davis Committee on Tax Reform, which has been doing quite a lot of good work in the background. Then, of course, the Parliamentary Committee on Finance will be looking at this budget, be looking at the documentation. They must interrogate these proposals. They may want to tweak them in some way. But the important point we have to understand is that this picture that has been presented, the fiscal picture that has been presented by the Minister of Finance, is for this year But we've got to look further ahead. Where is the growth coming from? Where will the new tax revenues come from? And where do we have to be very careful that we don't drift into a negative tax and spend cycle, which is really not good for our economic performance in the long run. If we want to do more things for more people, we need higher inclusive growth. And that's the important message that comes through in this budget.
Now, you've already publicly said that this particular budget was broadly realistic, it was balanced as well as predictable in the circumstances, but any great budget or even balanced budget does have its weaknesses. What is its greatest weakness, you think?
I think the greatest weakness is not the balancing of the books. From a technical point of view, that's been quite successful. The important point is, have we done enough to boost investor confidence, to be able to get this economy moving again? We want a growth rate of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6%, as has been spelled out by the National Development Program. I think the greatest omission was probably those aspects of economic reform and structural change which don't lie within the ambit of the Treasury directly. It's a team effort. And I think the great weakness is whether we have the assurance that whatever has been said in the budget or even left out of the budget will be addressed elsewhere in such a collective way that we can boost growth, can boost employment, and show visible means in which we can take the resources of the state and turn it into outcomes in a more effective way than we've been able to do up until now. So I think that's perhaps one of the weaknesses that is still there, but it will require a collective effort, not only by the government, but also between the government, business and labour.
One of the uncertainties could be political uncertainty. And how do you think this, how this budget will impact on the credit ratings agencies, which is again knocking on our doors, and their reaction to it, to assess South Africa when it comes to that time?
Well, Elvis, I think, I can't speak for them, but I would suspect they give 1.5 cheers for this budget, in the sense that if you look at the numbers, they simply reinforce what was outlined in the mini budget. So what the Minister of Finance has done is to say, I'm sticking with those numbers and I'm building on those numbers. So that is a source of reassurance. But of course, there will be these issues of uncertainty about economic reform, about the political noise, what kind of economic effects may flow from that in the next few months. So that will be the unfinished business on our agenda between now and the next time that the credit rating agencies will be reporting on South Africa.
Now, in his budget speech, the minister was very highly critical of the 17 international banks and South African banks that was found guilty of collusion. What do you make of this, and do you agree with the minister?
Look, I think he was absolutely right, and you and I have discussed it already, to say that we really have to be very critical of the somewhat reckless behavior on the part of certain banks, 3 South African and 14 from abroad. There are certain processes being undertaken by the Competition Commission and, of course, by the Competition Tribunal. He did point out there's still a legal process to be completed. But the perceptions are not good, and the sooner we can improve these perceptions for the banking sector, the better, because that sector is so important and vital for the South African economy.
We've seen that Citibank has now paid 69 million rand in fines for colluding, as well as Absa Bank, we believe, has now apologized, and they also want immunity from this. Is there more than meets the eye behind this, Professor? And then what is the process that will follow?
I think what we've got to understand broadly is that, of course, if you believe in the market system, you must play by the rules. And just as we don't like in sport to see the fixing of games, we don't like to see markets being fixed. So it's very important that we understand that 17 institutions have been involved. 2 of them have now followed a certain route, so there's still 15 left who have to appear before the Competition Tribunal, and we must let that take its course. I think we must draw a distinction, however, between the legal process and the court of public opinion. It's very important for the banks to turn those perceptions round on a positive basis, to identify if there are any rogue elements in the system, to eliminate them, and also for us to move rapidly on the Twin Peak regulations and that legislation, which is designed to improve the regulation of the banking system and will eliminate, hopefully, this kind of behavior in future.
In 20 seconds, Professor, final thought.
Well, as you've said earlier, Elvis, there is a political backdrop to the budget. I think the next important event will be the cabinet reshuffle. So one might say it's a game of political musical chairs. So what we want to know from an economic point of view is when the music stops, who doesn't have a chair? Because there will be some economic consequences.
Well, it all depends on who plays the music. Professor, thank you so much for your time. That was economist Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, the SBG, in our weekly slot of The Economy.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Welcome back. It's been a very heavy news day all around Gauteng, and Christelda Lewis has been on site in Marabastad as we see scenes of standoffs between residents who are both local as well as immigrants. So we cross now back live to Christelda Lewis on site in Marabastad.
Well, Kendall, still a very tense standoff here in Marabastad, where now many of the foreign nationals have moved into the different yards here behind the gates and are saying that they do not want the locals who had planned that march to continue. Instead, that they should go around the table and speak about what some of their concerns are. You see here many of them have taken cover after police had fired stun grenades and also some tear gas, and many of them are saying that despite there being some concerns by the locals in this area as well as other areas around Gauteng, they're the ones then who are inciting the violence. This is what foreign nationals are saying. Let's just move a bit closer here to this one and hear what some of them are saying at this stage. Let's go there.
For what reason?
Are you feeling very hunted?
This is the last room. Seriously.
I'm serious.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
Seriously. South Africa, we can't say there's a government. We can't say there's a government South Africa.
Yes. What do you want to say to the people?
We came here to look for better life and what we running for the conflict in our country, and then we came other clashes. Where can we stay now? Where's the government? They're just talking from TV, and the people are just harassing us in the home. We came from the location out to here. Where can we stay now? Where can we go?
Where you go?
Where can we go now? Anywhere. Where is our child? Where is our child?
Are you prepared to defend yourself against the locals today?
We want to defend our life and our property. Where can we go tonight? We don't know even some of them where are they. They ran yesterday night. It's better us to die.
You die. It's easy.
Well, that's just some of the sentiment being shared there by some of the foreign nationals who are saying they're feeling very intimidated and, as that one said, feeling very hunted at this point. They are saying they're just trying to defend themselves by carrying some of those stones that we saw a bit earlier on. But what has really happened at this point is that the police have managed, during that standoff when they fired tear gas and rubber bullets as well, managed to move the locals much further further from where we are at this point. So this is basically the scene here where the foreign nationals themselves are now behind closed gates in the different houses that are in this residential area here in Marabastad. And police moving through the streets as well, quite a number of them. Perhaps we could move towards this direction and show you some of that, where police are driving through the various streets here and basically trying to bring calm. And essentially, sir, let's just hear from you what some of your concerns are with regard to what's happening here.
No, these people, they want to loot our shops. They already loot there in locations. Now we took all of the stock and we bring here. Now they want to take this one. But this one will not allow. We want to protect our property and our children, our lives, everything we will protect. And we will fight until the end. Thank you very much.
All right, that's just some of the sentiment there. So the South Africans who we tried to speak to, the locals on the other side, police have managed to push them back towards the other area. But you can see here, police have now moved into this residential area where the foreign nationals who say their shops were looted in the townships brought their goods to this area and managed to keep them in these homes where they stay. So they're saying they're not going to allow the locals to come to this area and further loot the property which they have brought here. Police are now going through to the different areas we see now. Let's just move towards that direction. Something seems to be taking place there. We'll just move with you very quickly. We see they're running towards... Well, it seems we're hearing shouts that there is some looting that is taking place on the other end. We'll just move away from that direction a bit. Well, this might cause a further confrontation between the different sides, as we see some of them are picking up stones at this point. And we'll move towards this direction to see. Police now moving towards that area where we understand some looting is taking place. We'll try to bring you as close as possible to what is taking place. Well, we see. We see.
This is the final match. This is the final match. I'm telling you, there's no way to go.
Police are going to shoot this way.
Well, it's very tense from where we're broadcasting from at this stage. We'll try to go a bit closer. We'll try to go a bit closer. You'll just forgive us there a bit as we try to run to the different directions where we understand where on the other side some of the foreign nationals are. And we're hearing reports now that some looting is taking place. Police trying to prevent these foreign nationals here from moving towards that direction. Many of the gates also being closed to these homes in this area where we believe majority of these foreign nationals who are here, this is the area where they live. And they're saying they're going to defend themselves. I think it is quite a cause of concern for the police in that you've got both sides that are either armed with stones and machetes, and they'll try to avoid a situation where they go too close to each other. But I must say the locals are quite very far from where the foreign nationals are at this stage, as police drive through the streets to try and ensure that they try and bring back calm. The police helicopter continues to hover, and you see just there, just the scenes we were telling you about, where now all the gates have been closed and foreign nationals are now trying to get shelter on the other side of the gates of these homes where they live. And that is the scene basically for everyone who lives in this particular area. One of the leaders of the foreign nationals here having a word with police, assuring them that he will calm down everyone who's standing here towards the left of me, trying to ensure that they don't move from this area where they are at the moment. But the streets around this area, a huge police presence, as would be expected. But for how long the standoff will continue, we certainly cannot say at this point. But the intended march, you must recall, that was scheduled to get underway at 11 o'clock this morning, has taken a total different turn right now, because you've got this particular area here in Marabastad where you have the locals on the one side and the foreign nationals here. So the job of the police at this stage is to keep them apart, fearing what could happen if they do come into confrontation with each other. I think a majority of the concern at this point is also when the sun goes down a bit later on, what might take place. Police will certainly need to police all these areas that have been affected by the violence and the looting that we've seen over the past few weeks. Some of them are calling on police to protect them at this stage. Well, it seems neither side is willing to back down at this stage. Many of them saying they don't understand what the attacks are about, saying we're all African brothers and sisters, and they have no choice now but to defend themselves.
That is our character. The problem is that mayor in Johannesburg is the one who started this illegal immigrant is wiping. Is the one who started that mayor of DA, not the ANC. The mayor of DA in Johannesburg and the mayor of Pretoria are the one who are responsible for these things. They are the one who are behind it. They are the one who are behind it. We are not fighting with ANC. We are not fighting with the black South Africans. We are not doing that. They will be out of control. You are not Africans. You are not Africans. We will die. We don't scared to die. We don't scared to die.
Also me, I'm already fighting.
We are here. Tell the world we are here. We don't scared to die. We are not scared to die. We don't scared to die. I'm telling you. South Africa will be out of continent. We don't have a right. We don't have a right.
Well, heightened tensions are certainly where we are as we bring you this live coverage here. Well, those are the scenes that we continue to see here in Marabastad, where now what police have managed to do, as we have been saying, is try to separate the locals from the foreign nationals, and both basically saying they're going to defend themselves at this point. And you know, the tensions since this morning have really heightened from what we've seen over the past couple of weeks. And you know, these foreign nationals essentially saying they do not want South Africans to behave in the manner in which they have, looting their shops, and are saying that they managed to remove all their goods from the shops where they were, but now they've moved to this area, this residential area, and are saying that the locals are now trying to loot. There you have, we see now the water cannon has been brought in. The water cannon has been brought in to move, to try and move back some of the foreign nationals in this area. Well, the water cannon basically trying to move back the large gatherings that we've just seen here, where the foreign nationals have been expressing their concerns. And street by street, that's where police continue to move to. You would see just in front of that water cannon there is a bakkie that has quite a number of foreign nationals at the back of it, and what police are now essentially trying to do is to break up the big crowds that we are seeing to try and make sure that the violence here certainly does not continue. But many of the markets that are foreign owned here have now closed. You could see towards that direction there, where again, right behind that gate, foreign nationals are just taking cover there as police continue to move to the different streets here in Marabastad, trying to make sure that there aren't large crowds that gather, trying to make sure that the situation does return to normalcy. But we'll certainly cross to you much later on in the bulletin just to bring you an update of the situation here. But police covering all the different areas here in Marabastad, trying to make sure that the violence does not break out once again, as both sides, both the locals and the foreign nationals, are both armed at this stage, and trying to disarm all of them is going to be quite a challenge at this point. But we'll certainly bring you a lot more here on SABC News, live coverage from what was supposed to be a march by foreign nationals, I beg your pardon, a march by Mamelodi concerned residents who were saying that they're marching against the drug dens as well as the prostitution rings that are being run in these different communities. We'll certainly bring you a lot more from this area. Back to you in studio for now.
Live visuals there from Marabastad in Pretoria, where that march is underway. Quite chaotic scenes that have broken out over the last hour or so. We'll definitely cross back to Griselda Lewis for updates on what is happening there. Stay with us, your midday report coming up next. We'll take a short break.